Good morning. We'll begin this morning by having our invocation by our Don Ash, our 911 EMA Director.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair and community. Let us pray. Father God, it is in the name of Jesus, Lord, we come before you today to give your name praise, honor, and glory for another day you have created, God. Lord, as we continue to work through COVID-19 and the many challenges that this community has faced, God, we thank you for the commissioners you have empowered to lead this community. Lord, we ask you now to bless this meeting, every item, every agenda that go before you, God. And in everything, God, we do, we want to give you praise, honor, and glory. For it's in the matchless name of Jesus Christ we do pray. Amen.
I pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call our meeting to order, the Henry County Board of Commissioners, Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. We're going to begin with our presentations from Harold Cooper, our HR Director, on our retirement recognitions.
Good morning, Madam Board Chair, distinguished board members. It's an honor to come before you today to honor 5 retirees for the month of June. First, Mr. John Harper from the Henry County Sheriff's Office, 29 years of service as a Lieutenant 3. Second, Mr. Mark Henley served as a captain in our EMT unit, 29 years of service for the Henry County Fire Department. Third, Mr. Kevin Wallace served in our Henry County Sheriff's Office, 12 years of service as a sergeant. Fourth, Mr. Gary Soule served in our Henry County Sheriff's Office, 12 years of service as a Lieutenant 3. And finally, Mr. James Joyce, who served in our Parks and Recreation Service, 11 years of service as a supervisor. We honor these employees and we thank them for their commitment to Henry County. Thank you.
Going to have an impact fee study update. Stacy.
Good morning, Chair Harrell, Commissioners. This morning I want to present you with Bill Ross. He's our consultant who's putting all this together. I think you're going to find what he's presenting today very informative. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Bill Ross.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I am Bill Ross, and we have reached a milestone in the impact fee study in that we have completed the draft of what's called the methodology report. This is presented to you for information. You don't need to adopt it or anything, but it forms the backbone, if you will, of the impact fee program. Oop. I think I go the other way. Here we go. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to talk generally about why even have impact fees, future growth in the county. We've projected it out to 2045. Where are we in the process? We're going to look very briefly at impact fee calculations, how this is actually done. We're going to look at examples of your maximum impact fees. And let me emphasize that. This report calculates the maximum. you could charge as an impact fee. What you actually charge will be up to you, and particularly when we get to the ordinance time, we'll be talking about what fees you actually want to adopt. But the law says we can't charge too much. So the question is, what's too much? And the too much is the maximum. Can't go over it. You can adopt lower fees than that. We're going to look at some other cities and counties as far as what are they charging for impact fees. And we're going to talk briefly about impact fee exemptions. You have exemptions now. You could keep it, you could expand it, you could add to it. And then, of course, the schedule, looking at the road ahead. So the basic reason to even have impact fees is because new growth, new development doesn't pay its own way. And of course you have impact fees right now, but basically as the tax base increases, whether this is SPLOST or property taxes or whatever, new growth and development starts generating income to the county. Meanwhile, of course, everybody who's here now keeps on paying the fees every year. So if you sort of sketch that out, you can ignore the numbers on this chart. The idea is that the dark blue, that's the tax base right now, and that would continue into the future. Of course, it goes up slowly as inflation happens, but at any rate, that goes on into the future. New growth, however, builds up. In this little chart, by the end of the time period here, I've got the tax base generated by new growth more than doubling the total tax base, but it builds up slowly. Meanwhile, you've got fire trucks you need to buy, you've got fire stations you need to build, police facilities, et cetera, so that you have to find some way to pay for those while you're waiting for these impact fees to come increasingly rolling in. So that's also, of course, with impact fees, that displaces having to use other forms of taxation to pay for these same facilities. You free up SPLOS, T-SPLOS, bond issues, et cetera, for projects that are not impact fee projects, while you shift more to the impact fees to pay for those facilities. Looking at future growth, well, my numbers didn't come out very clearly on the left-hand side, but the top line there is the county population between now and 2045 or 24, yeah. And the dashed line is the number of housing units going up. Well, excuse me, those are the jobs. The dashed line is jobs. Jobs will go up, and of course, the blue line is housing units. Housing units, of course, grow as the population increases. So you're looking at a 2040 population of almost 360,000 people countywide. And that has grown from, in 2000, 2020, we believe you have about 240,000. So that's how much growth you're looking at over the next 20 years here. This is a summary of the whole impact fee process. We're over here in the upper left-hand corner there, methodology report. That includes the forecast we were just talking about. It includes all the projects that are impact fee eligible. And it also includes what I mentioned about the maximum impact fees. From there, we will move to the right-hand side and prepare the so-called capital improvements element. This has forecasts in it. It has the projects identified, but it does not include the impact fees themselves. This is the report that goes to the state through ARC for review, and ultimately it will become an amendment to your comprehensive plan. New to that report would be the community work program. You have one now in your comprehensive plan. You have to update it every year, as you know, with annual reports. I think you've got an annual report coming along right now. So that goes off to to ARC. They send it to DCA, and that's a 60-day review process. Meanwhile, while DCA is looking at the reports, we'll be drafting the ordinance, working with you on what do you want to do in terms of the fees you want to adopt. And there are a number of minor amendments that need to be made. The law has changed over the years, nothing drastic, nothing serious, but definitions have changed. There have been enough minor changes in the law that we need to update your ordinance with those also. Once the ordinance is drafted, you'll hold 2 public hearings in order to adopt the ordinance. It's not usual, but the impact fee law actually says you have to have these 2 public hearings to adopt the amended ordinance. Meanwhile, we should hear back from the state, and so, with our fingers crossed, we'll be able to adopt the capital improvements element as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and adopt the ordinance along with, of course, the fee schedule that you've settled on, hopefully at the same meeting. Usually works out that way, but sometimes it doesn't. So, just a nutshell. The way we come up with these costs, folks tell us, county folks tell us, how much is it going to cost to buy a fire truck or build a playground? So we start off with what's it cost to do these things today? Then we have to do what's called a net present value calculation. What that is what's it going to cost us in the future that we need to plan for? If you know you're going to take a vacation in 10 years, today that vacation cost you $10,000 for the package. You know in 10 years it's going to be more than $10,000. So you have to look forward, how much money do you really need 10 years from now, and then back that up. If you put the money in the bank, you're collecting interest on it. What does it take to get you out to the amount you actually need? So there are also credits, SPLOST, bonds, property taxes. It depends on each facility category and how they're being funded beyond impact fees. So that gives you the maximum net fee for the impact fees, and that's what's calculated in this report. There's a summary table in here, as well as tables for each public facility category individually. So here's just an example. I pulled a few of the many land use categories, and to compare them to the currently adopted fees. And you can imagine going out to, well, for instance, a single family house could be assessed $12,519 at the maximum impact fee. How does that compare to your current fee, which is only $1,661? You see that column percentage difference. What's the difference between the maximum fee and the current fee. And we also compared that to cost of construction over there on the right-hand side. Right now, the average single-family house in the county, according to Zillow, is running about almost $340,000 per house, and that's just the average. Obviously, there's higher and lower. So your current fee is only 0.5% of that cost. If you adopted the maximum fee, that fee would be 3.7% of the cost of the house. And those are the kinds of things you'll be thinking about when it comes time to talk about what do we really want to adopt as fees. Looking at others, Henry County is the bottom line on each of these categories. Up there at the top, single-family home, we've shown, if you just go way over to the right-hand side, that's the total. You can see how Henry County's maximum fee would compare to folks like Sandy Springs, Milton, Fayetteville, Spalding County, Rockdale County, and those are the fees that those communities have adopted. We did the same thing with a 200-unit apartment complex. We looked at a 60,000 square foot supermarket and a 40,000 square foot general office building in these examples. So you can see how your maximum fee would stack up to these other communities of what they're charging right now. There are many ways to reduce the impact fees. Number one, of course, you can adopt an impact fee schedule that's lower than the maximum as part of that ordinance. Also, within that ordinance, there are exemptions. You have one exemption right now, one type of exemption. There's a provision in there. Somebody says, well, wait a minute, I'm different from all these other people. Individual fee assessments can be made on a case-by-case basis. Individuals can appeal. And under the impact fee law, somebody can appeal their impact fee for any reason under the sun. There's no limitation. My grandmother's having an operation and I haven't got the money, or whatever it might be. Generally, and you have a staff review process on appeals. If they can't be resolved at the staff level, they end up coming to you for a final decision. There are credits that can be given. If a developer says, well, instead of paying the impact fee, how about I give you 3 acres for a park and count that against my impact fee amount? You can have a developer agreement to set those kinds of things in place. Exemptions, I mentioned there are 2 kinds. One is for extraordinary economic development. The other is for affordable housing. You have an exemption right now for certain economic development projects that generate jobs, generate tax base, et cetera. There's 2 requirements in the law. Number one, the public policy that supports the exemption has to be in your comprehensive plan. That's accomplished by putting it in that capital improvements element, which when you adopt it, that amends the comprehensive plan. So that's how that gets in there. And secondly, this is very important, any amount of money you grant as an exemption, you have to make up for in the impact fee categories from other money. The basic idea there is that you've granted an exemption because it's of public benefit. So in essence, the public has to pay for having gained that benefit from the development and make up the difference on in the impact fees. These are just some quick examples. As I said, you have impact fees for businesses right now that are very specific. You can also have an exemption to encourage affordable housing, maybe encourage a mix of lower cost units in multifamily developments, et cetera. Right now today, there is only one other jurisdiction in the state of Georgia that has actually adopted an affordable housing exemption, and that happens to be Sandy Springs. And Sandy Springs has a program to encourage affordable housing already, and so their exemption from impact fees adds to it. And basically, it says if a developer of a multifamily development, whether it's apartments or particularly condos, if they will put at least 5% of the units in that project to meet the affordable limits that the city has already set, then they get a reduction in their impact fee. That exemption's been out there for about 5 years now, and not one person has ever claimed the exemption. And my feeling is when you're selling condominiums for $1.3 million, you're not talking about wanting to put some affordable housing in your development. So it's optional there. It's just never been used. That's not the only approach that could be used in providing an affordable housing exemption, but that's one example that is out there. So the road ahead. The capital improvements element is the next report you will see. We'll be working on that through July. And we anticipate having a transmittal public hearing at your August the 3rd meeting. And that's when you don't approve the CIE, you just approve its transmittal for review by the state. And like I said, that's about a 60-day process. So we're looking at hearing back from DCA, the state, in probably early October. At the latest. Sometimes they actually beat their own 60-day process. Meanwhile, we'll be working with you to draft the amendments to the impact fee ordinance. I expect we'll be getting together in August to be doing that. And so by September the 8th, we need to know what the impact fee schedule is going to be that you actually want to adopt. Because on September the 8th, you will have your first public hearing on the ordinance. And it will be an advertised public hearing. The second public hearing we anticipate to be on October the 5th, and again at your morning meeting. And with fingers crossed, we will have the approval for the CIE and adoption of the ordinance both on the agenda for October the 5th. So those are our targets as the process goes forward. I think. Okay, I'm jumping ahead. So that, Madam Chair, that is the summary of my presentation. If anybody has any questions at all, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Commissioner Clemens.
I'm really concerned about the methodology that you use for comparison of our county with the counties that you have. I don't think that it was a fair comparison because you compared us with Spalding and Rockdale. Spalding's average home is $162,000. Rockdale average home is $227,000. We're at $340,000. And then the population of Spalding is only 66,000 people. The population of Rockdale is only 90,000 people. And we're more comparable to Forsyth, Cherokee, and Clayton when it comes to population and home values. I just would really like a better comparison when it comes to our county, and it would be very difficult for me to look at, what our impact fees should be on an amount or percentage basis without having more accurate comparisons to other counties. So I really would like to see you bring those,
Sure.
redo that methodology, because those are not great comparisons for us. A lot of times people look at Henry County and they look at us with the Spalding and the Rockdales just because of where we're located. But from a population, when you got a county with home values at $340,000 average, Spalding and Rockdale is not where we should be compared.
They're there only because they are competition, if you will, and they're neighboring counties. I can add more. I have buku-doodles of other examples, like Forsyth County. Forsyth County is surprisingly low, but I think I put in Milton and Alpharetta as being more in line with your house values.
And I had another point to that. You mentioned a lot about cities. When you talk about Milton, Forsyth, Milton, Alpharetta, Fayetteville, you reference Sandy Springs, those are all cities. So cities do a lot of different things that counties don't do. Cities do prepare for the affordable housing, and they have more of the high-density impact of things. And I think that's a bad comparison to us as a county as well. Yes, Forsyth is lower, but they have a booming economic development community. And that's, I think, for what I'm hearing for our citizens, we want our county to be economically sound and sustainable. So we need to really compare ourselves to counties that are doing that, so that we don't enforce impact fees that's not enough, or impact fees that's going to force us not to grow economically in an advantageous way.
Sure.
Any other questions? Commissioner Thomas.
I think this question is more directed to our county manager. Will there be a point person internally that will work with this gentleman to make sure that his information is in alignment with the county itself? Have you decided who that person will be?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually under our planning and zoning department, so Toussaint Kirk and Stacy Jordan Rusil are the point of contacts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll add to that, Stacy and I had a number of conversations about comparing the impact fee program to your transportation plan and other plans that are currently underway.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have an update on expenditures for the Community Development Block Grant CARES. Raven?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Raven Bodine. I'm a Planner 1 with the Community Development Department, and I'm here this morning to provide you with an update as far as our expenditures for our CARES funds, or what we refer to as CDBG CV1. So this year, when when the pandemic began, we received funds from HUD in the amount of $704,701. We distributed those funds to four different agencies to provide public services to the community. We started with the Friends House, who did public facility improvements. With those improvements, they were able to. Actually, let me step back a little bit. Additionally, we were able to fund Africa's Children's Fund to provide subsistence payments, Connecting Henry to also provide subsistence payments. Connecting Henry also provided an employment training program, and Hands of Hope Clinic provides health services to the community. With that, we were also able to allocate funds to micro enterprise assistance, and then as well as our administration and planning, which is a 20% cap of our allocation. In the spring of this year, we did make a substantial amendment to our annual action plan. With that, we were able to allocate more funds to subsistence payments, as we saw that the community wasn't able to stay housed as we had hoped. So we did pull back those funds, and then some of that was also reprogrammed into our FY21 funds, which are coming up in the fall. So with that, we were able to fund a friend's house. They are a homeless facility for youth. And with those funds, they were able to provide regular cleaning, fogging of the building, computers for the staff and for the youth, and as well as a new security system, which gave new cameras, monitors, key fobs, and a surveillance system. For Africa's Children's Fund, they were able to continue assisting the community with rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. These are for low-mod households. We were able to assist 93 households. And since the spring, we have pulled that back with the ERAP funding. Now they are specifically assisting mortgage and utility households. Connecting Henry was awarded 2 awards. With that, the first was for subsistence payments. They received an increase in funding to assist more households with funding. They also do rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. In the spring, we did pull that back to where they were just assisting with mortgage and utility assistance, since we did have the ERAP funding. They are also doing an employment training program. It offers a 2-week course where participants can participate in interview skills, counseling sessions, resume coaching, and then attend a job fair at the close of the session. They have also been able to do 2 sessions of that, the second one occurring this week. Hands of Hope Clinic was able to assist adults within the community with dental and medical assistance. These are for unemployed or uninsured Henry County adults. With that, they were able to assist 680 adults with those services. One thing in particular that they did have to change due to the pandemic was to pull back their dental services for a few months. Just as the pandemic began to slow down, they were able to increase that assistance. Can I answer any questions for you today?
Are there any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Thomas.
I wanted to know if you can explain to us your accountability process. Are they sending in reports every month to you? How are you all monitoring how the dollars are actually being used and accounted for?
Yes, ma'am. So we did an application process, and that's how we determined which agencies would be funded. From that, they do also have to sign an agreement with the county, and in that they submit a quarterly report that details the number of people they are assisting and their demographics, as well as their expenditures. They do present us with reimbursements that we then analyze and double check to make sure everything is a allowable expense before they receive payment. And they also, at the close of their contract, send in a year-end report, and that totals everything that they have expended as well as who they have served for the year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a financial services update. David?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Henry County community. This presentation is going to cover our financial report for 11 months and primarily SPLOS, and I'll endeavor to be brief. I want to talk quickly about our COVID-19 response for the community. We quickly mobilized to help small businesses and our nonprofits. The duration of this COVID crisis remains uncertain, and I believe it's worth noting that during our awards to small businesses and nonprofits, we awarded 150 small businesses and 23 nonprofits public funding. We're recommending later another solution that will help us maximize funding to our nonprofits and position ourselves for any future impacts. I wanted to touch on our emergency rental assistance program, just to provide a brief, quick update. We have about $6 million that was provided to us to assist with rental and utility payments. So far, 1,733 people have connected to our program application. About 860 of those individuals submitted complete applications, which is approximately 50% of those. And we've awarded $1.7 million of that $6 million, or about 29.7%. We're going to have another rental assistance program this upcoming Saturday. We're also received American Recovery Plan Act funding, where we are going to work on developing a strategic plan for the community, and that's forthcoming. So let's talk some numbers. Right now, our revenues are 192.8. That's about 109% of our revenues, and we've only expended 89% of the budget. This revenue increase is primarily driven by the coronavirus relief funds reimbursement, higher property tax collections, higher loss collections, and motor vehicle ad valorem tax collections. This year, we had the addition of Red Speed revenue, which is primarily for police services. Our local government here in Henry County, our revenue from loss and SPLOS has not taken a significant hit as compared to other government revenues. Our SPLOS collections are currently averaging approximately $3.9 million per month, which is approximately $500,000 better than the budget. This next slide is, even though it's small, is the financial report. It's important to note on this slide that we are spending out of our cash collections. Month to date, our expenditures exceed revenue $4.2 million, even though year to date, we're $36.2 million better than our amended fiscal year budget. We're forecasting to come in the year approximately $6 million to $10 million better than our amended fiscal year budget. This next slide is a graphical representation of where we currently stand. Year-to-date actuals versus our annual budget status, where you see our $36 million. This next slide is a year-over-year comparison performance to see how we do each month. And you'll note there where we were primarily $9 million worse month over month, but still performing year-to-date better. This slide is a graphical representation to see that. So let's look at SPLOS collections. If you look at this slide, SPLOS collections are trending better than our current projections. Collections to date are at $50.4 million. And so far, we've only expended 4.3. This is a graphical representation where you see our SPLOS collections. The blue line is the budget, where you see us overperforming our budget in terms of SPLOS collections. Questions always arise about how Cotton Fields is doing. Year-to-date, Cotton Fields expenditures exceed their revenues by $12,000. Green fees representing 72% of that. Excluding debt payments, Cotton Fields is not a burden on our general fund. I'll be happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Clemens.
I'm glad you put Cotton Fields up. But I wanted to ask you a question about where does the enterprise funds, I know we have several enterprise funds in our budget. We've got the airport enterprise fund, we've got Nash Farms, I think it's set aside as the enterprise funds, and there may be others. I don't know where that is in your budget. And also, if you could give us the balance on the debt, how much do we still owe on Nash Farms, and how much do we still owe on Cotton Fields, because I see you excluded the debt payment.
So I will include the Nash Farm debt in my next presentation, but we're paying off the debt on Cotton Fields. That'll be paid off in 2033. In terms of our SPLOS debt, that'll be paid off in 2025, and the Nash Farm debt should be paid off in 2023, not 2033, for the Nash Farms. But I'll include that in the next presentation.
And the balance of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be moving to our consent agenda. I'd like to ask our county manager, Sherry Matthews, to come up. Will there be an amendment to the consent agenda? Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, I'd like to request an amendment to item, trying to get to it down here. Listed under finance, the resolution amending resolution 20-245 about the changes in percentages that are being allocated to our nonprofits. Shall I make the resolution, the amendment now, or wait until she presents?
So we'll need to remove this item from the consent agenda and place it on the regular agenda.
Then I'd like to make a recommendation that we move this from consent agenda to the regular agenda.
Okay. We'll move that item to the regular agenda. Is there any additions to the consent agenda? Is the fireworks one of the
Yes, I'm
items
gonna
that
add
need to be added to the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. It's a resolution to approve the use of fireworks.
Okay,
And I'll
all
add that
right.
in the
You may
consent.
proceed.
Okay. Consent agenda for Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. I'm sorry. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. The consent agenda for this morning, we have an item from the Emergency Management Agency. It's a resolution approving the renewal of the L3 Harris Radio System Maintenance Agreement in the amount of $80,000 for fiscal year 2021-2022. We have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners declaring property surplus and approving disposal of various unusable office furniture and equipment. Under the Sheriff's Office, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving the acceptance of an equipment award grant valued at $91,956 from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC. Under the Fire Department, we have a resolution accepting a grant from the Georgia Trauma Commission in the amount of $14,943 to purchase trauma equipment and emergency medical supplies for Henry County Fire Department. Under the Police Department, we have a resolution to approve a 3-year agreement between ICU Technologies, FUSE's Real-Time Crime Center software program, and Henry County Police Department at a yearly cost of $95,717.88 for a total of $287,153.64, and that is for 3 years utilizing Red Speed funds. Under PD, we also have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners to adopt the bylaws established by the Citizens Police Advisory Committee, commonly referred to as CPAC, required by Resolution 20-142. Under Risk Management, we have a resolution accepting a grant from the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, ACCG, in the amount of $10,000 for safety items in efforts to reduce workers' compensation claims for the Henry County Risk and Safety Management Department. Under Stormwater, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving the Henry County Water Authority utility relocation costs for Scarborough Road. The estimated cost to relocate Henry County Water Authority's facilities is $13,213.73. Stormwater covers 50% of the relocation costs, with the estimated Henry County Stormwater share cost being $6,606.87. We also have a resolution approving a 3-year lease/purchase of 3 sweeper vehicles to Timeco, Inc. with a 3-year period maintenance plan. First year payment includes the prepaid maintenance and will be $271,205.37. The second and third year payments are both $190,000, $499.37, where the total cost of the lease purchase for the 3 sweepers and maintenance for 3 years is $652,204.11. Under Leisure Services, we have a resolution to award an RFQ to Sourcewell contract to USA Shade and Fabric Structures for the purchase of a shade structure to cover the outdoor workout equipment at Village Park in the amount of $40,746, utilizing funds from the Capital Improvement Plan. Under Courts, we have a resolution approving the expenditure of drug abuse treatment and education funds, DATE funds, in the amount of $95,000 for the purpose of supporting the Henry County Misdemeanor DUI Drug Court. Under Community Development Block Grant, we have a resolution to amend the signer for the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, DCA, Emergency Solutions Grant, ESGCV, drawdowns. Under Neighborhood Stabilization Program, we have a resolution approving the award of bid number 21-72 to K-Team Engineering and Construction, Inc. to provide general contractor services for 2 4-unit multifamily apartment buildings located at 101, 104 George Street and 109, 112 George Street in Hampton, Georgia, 30228 in the amount of $824,483 for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. Under SPLOST, we have a resolution of the Henry County Board of Commissioners approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Locust Grove for cost sharing with respect to improvements to LG Griffin Road. We also have a resolution approving naming county properties located at 1935 Panola Road, Ellenwood, Georgia, in District 5, Village United Soccer Lacrosse Park. Under Transit, we have a resolution approving the Department of Human Services contract for fiscal year 2022 for transportation services provided to elderly and disabled individuals in the amount of $458,954.40. And then under Human Resources, we have a resolution approving the proposed amended agreement with Everside Health, formerly known as HealthStat, Inc. The amendment will allow Henry County government retirees and their spouses to utilize the Henry County Cares Wellness Center. We also have added an item. It is a resolution to approve the use of fireworks for the proposed bicentennial events planned for Picnic in the Park on July 30th, 2021 at J.P. Mosley Park, and the Christmas tree lighting event on December 3rd, 2021 at Nash Farm Park. This ends the consent agenda.
Okay, so I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
May I get a second? Second. Any discussion? Commissioner Clemens?
Harrell, on the Nash Farms tree lighting, can we add tree lighting and Unity event, because we've always called it Unity?
Yes, ma'am. Sherry, can you make sure that you make that amendment?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now move to our regular agenda.
Chair Harrell, would you like to handle the item that we moved off the consent first?
Yes, let's
Okay.
go ahead and do that first.
Okay, so I'll have David Smith come up regarding the resolution amending Resolution number 20-245, authorizing the amendment which changes percentage allocation of funds and approving transfer of funds in order to further assist nonprofits due to COVID-19.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and the Henry County community. What you have before you is a resolution which changes the percentage allocation of funds and approves the transfer of those funds to further assist nonprofits. A little background. Our current allocations were 40% to the county, 30% to small businesses, where we granted them up to $10,000 per small business, and 30% to nonprofits. To date, we have approximately $1.6 million that remains of the county's allocation, and the nonprofits have been overextended, where they were allocated $2.5 million. We've already awarded them $2.6 million. COVID-19 continues to be a threat in Henry County, and our Henry County residents continue to struggle with their mortgage and utility assistance. This request, changing the existing allocation from 40%, changes the county's allocation to 25% to the county, 30% remains to small businesses, and 45% then goes to nonprofits. This makes additional funds available to assist the eligible households impacted by COVID-19, targeting cash relief for our nonprofits. I provided a list in your packet of those nonprofits that we're recommending. We recommended approximately 8 nonprofits that provide public services to the community. And that recommendation also includes their allocation. The allocation methodology was based upon the percentages that we awarded them initially. If you don't have that in front of you, I'll be glad to provide that information to you, the Excel spreadsheet. Staff is recommending reallocating the funds from the county to the nonprofits that have demonstrated exceptional competencies and capability in assisting Henry County with mortgage and utility payments, and transferring those funds to the nonprofits as soon as practicable. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. So we have the resolution before us. Are there any, is there any discussion on this? Commissioner Thomas?
Yes. I would like for us to look at the awards that are being presented before us and consider some changes. And these changes are because, as you just heard from our community block grant, there are dollars being allocated to certain agencies from that for some of the same purposes as some of the dollars that are being allocated here. So this is not in any form or fashion will hurting any particular agency because they are receiving those dollars from another department or another area from the government here today. So in essence, I would like to see from Connecting Henry, $150,000 to be added to Grace Baptist Church. And there again, remember, they're receiving another allocation of funds from community block grants. I also like to see a $50,000 increase go to Miracle Mission Hope House, which sits in Blacksville and serves that community on an ongoing basis. And the goal is to make sure that these dollars are spread around enough in the community to help all areas of the community, and not just in one concentrated area. And by doing so, we have not hurt any particular agency. We've just spread the dollars around to help more areas in our communities at a faster basis. And that's the reason for that. And please remember, some of these agencies are also receiving dollars from our community block grants as well to do some of the very same services. So that's the reason for the recommendation. And I'm asking this board to consider that amendment and add it to this resolution.
Okay, so what do you propose that the money is taken from?
From Connecting Henry, $150,000 go to Grace Baptist Church, and an additional $50,000 go to M&M Mission Hope House, Miracle Mission Hope House.
So Commissioner Thomas, would you like to put that in form of a motion in changing this resolution?
I would definitely like to put in the form of a motion that we change the allocations to remove $150,000 from Connecting Henry to Grace Baptist Church, an additional $50,000 from Connecting Henry to Miracle Mission Hope House based on these allocations. Also added to that, I would like to make sure that we enforce or have in our resolution a 15% cap on all administrative services for managing these fees as well, which is the same cap that we have for the other company that's doing our ERAP. It matches that.
So David, is there a cap on admin fees?
So there's
from-
no cap on our admin fees.
Okay.
There's a cap on whenever we receive a grant, there's a cap on their admin fees. But we don't have a cap on our admin fees.
And I'm asking to match the cap on this one, which matches the ERAP program that we have now in place.
In terms of the ERAP program, their cap, ERAP 1, their cap is at 10%.
10%?
We utilize that, and then when we start implementing ERAP 2, that cap is at 15%.
I thought I heard 15% somewhere. Okay, so 15% is what I'm recommending because this is like phase 2 for them.
For clarification, I want to make sure, the Miracle Mission Hope House, are you asking to take 50,000 from Connecting Henry or add 50,000 more? Take that from Connecting
Yes.
Henry? Okay, 200,000, okay. Thank you.
That is my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Chair,
Okay,
I have a question.
yes, sir.
Well, go ahead with your second. I asked the question before we make, go, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Clemens, are you seconding that motion? Okay, all right. Commissioner Wilson.
So David, got a question. If, I'm gonna take these Grace Baptist, if they run out of funds, so they could go to Connecting Henry, the people that's trying to make application through Grace Baptist, and if they run out of funds, they go to Connecting Henry to make the application as well, correct?
So the short answer is yes, that's correct. But all of our nonprofits, the plan is to post the links to those nonprofits, and each of them have been working with us to, let's say I go to Grace and they don't have sufficient funds, they'll send me to Connecting Henry.
Right.
And so they've been working with us or cooperating with us to make certain that the residents get served.
And the same thing with the Mission of Hope House. They can go to Connecting Henry as well, right?
That is correct.
That's
The person-
So I'm not sure moving this money around is going to really help anybody. When the funds are available, they just go to if they run out of funds, just go to Connect to Henry and make application.
So what
Or
has
the
been helpful?
application.
What has been helpful for us, Commissioner, has been the locations of where they are. And so it's very easy for them to go to Miracle Mission, Hope House, and as long as they have sufficient funding there, we're able to accommodate them versus sending them across the county. It's
Okay.
So a lot of this has a lot to do with accessibility.
accessibility is
And those that are
very key.
in need the most is the areas where she's trying to reallocate the funds.
That's correct.
Okay? Commissioner Clemens.
I would like to add to that, Chair Herrera, yes, location, and there are people that don't even know about Connecting Henry that may be parts of those larger communities, like the our Christian-based, faith-based organizations that do a lot of good work. So I see accessibility as well as just knowledge of the organizations as well.
So we have a motion, yes, Commissioner Cannon.
Are these funds allocated based on historical data? Or how do we originally assess who gets what?
So it's based on historical data. That's how I arrived at the percentages. So when we initially established the program and we were awarding the nonprofits there was no cap on how much they were awarded. It was based on how much that they believed that they could adequately handle. And so that's how those amounts were established. As long as they could provide the reimbursement support for their expenditures, then they were able to receive the money. We also set up a process where we awarded them 30% up front to continue their operations, and then as they submitted their reimbursements, we provided them the additional 70%, of which this will not be a part of that. It will just be awarding them the funds that they need to continue. That's how the initial distributions were established, based upon what those agencies believed they could distribute and what they asked for.
And additionally, Commissioner Cannon, there was a committee that vetted all of the applications. So our staff vetted the applications, and then the committee vetted it further and made recommendations to the board in terms of those nonprofits that were selected.
And are all of these entities following procedure and practices and paperwork, and everybody's keeping it above the board and doing what they should do?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the list that's presented to you all is based on those nonprofits that have provided the necessary paperwork and done everything that we've asked them to do at the staff level.
Okay.
So pretty much they have been in compliance with
That is
everything.
correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
So we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, we're going to move forward with the vote. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, regular agenda, transportation planning, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Stockbridge, McDonough, Locust Grove, and Hampton for a transportation special purpose local option sales tax. Sam.
So Sam is listed as the presenter, but I'm going to tag team this presentation with him because I know you all have received multiple emails from our clerk as we forwarded them at the staff level. I wanted you all to be aware that the changes that you all have received as a result of the project list changing within the respective cities. There were some Scribner errors and some things within the IGA, but it was nothing that was monumental that would change the intent of the IGA. And so I wanted you all to be aware of that. What I'm going to ask Sam to do this morning is just to highlight those changes. I think when we had our workshop meeting last week, Commissioner Thomas mentioned some concerns about partnerships with our respective cities, and specifically the city of Stockbridge. And so I did send to you all last night what Stockbridge has presented back to the board, and I'll let Sam go through what those changes are. I did receive an updated project list from McDonough and the city of Hampton as well. And then just for the city of Locust Grove, a couple of clarifications with the district commissioner. And so that's been added to the list. So I'll let Sam get through the project list. And then what we'll be asking you all to do this morning is to approve the IGA with the project list as presented. And then what will happen after this is we'll send that approved IGA to the respective cities, who will then approve the IGA. Then we'll bring it back to the board for you all to call for the election at the second meeting in July. I was going to say November, second meeting in July. And so I will tell you, the cities have worked very hard to partner on projects that they can partner on. And I've heard from at least 2 or 3 of the city managers that they don't foresee any issues once they take the IGA to their respective cities. So I definitely think we're headed in the right direction in moving to the next steps. So I'll pause and let Sam give an update on the project list. And then if you all have any questions for myself, Sam, or any of our staff members, we'll be available to answer.
We received a project list from the city of Stockbridge late last night, past 10 o'clock. So I have a PowerPoint presentation this morning. All the project lists from Henry County, McDonough, Hampton, and Locust Grove are up to date, except the Stockbridge. So I'll share that with you separately. So let's start with the... So this is the Henry County project list, which includes the State Route 81 widening, Phase 1, $28 million. Bill Gardner Parkway widening, $34 million. Jonesboro Road widening, $35 million. Mill Road widening, $5 million. McDonough Parkway extension, $14 million. Rock Quarry Road widening, $27 million, which we're going to share with the city of Stockbridge. Fairview Road widening, $12 million. So that will leave us with about $10 million, $2,040, which we will split evenly for 5 ways among the 5 commission districts. Those funds will be used for resurfacing, sidewalks, and intersection improvements.
And before Sam's move further, I do want to add the State Route 42 congestion relief project that was from Commissioner Wilson. He asked to take $250,000 out of his resurfacing funds, and so that project is actually listed in this project list as $250,000.
That's the City of McDonough's project list. I had to talk with the City of McDonough. What they shared with me that this is a completely revamped list. I don't have anything particular to say this is something they added or something they dropped. They simply told us that ignore the previous list and just go with this list. This is what the City Council of McDonough has adopted. I'm going to skip this one. City of Locust Grove, State Route 42 congestion relief projects, $3,500,000. Bill Gardner West enhancements widening, $500,000. State Route 42 widened from Bill Gardner Parkway to Marketplace Boulevard, $900,000. Resurfacing projects in targeted areas, $2,150,000. State Route 42 and Bethlehem Signal intersection improvement, $200,000. And the last one is Bikeway Pathway Network shared use signage, $250,000. The City of Hampton Peace Plus project list includes Elm Street, $850,000, College Street, $425,000, Central Avenue, $322,200, Lower Woolsey Road, $2,200,000, Barham Street, $650,000, and then some resurfacing citywide, $1.4 million. McDonough's project list, what they pointed out to me is that they have added Lower Woolsey Road project, which is $2,200,000, and added $1,400,000 of resurfacing projects, and they have dropped from their previous list Kindle Drive and Ashland Drive storm infrastructure and culvert replacement worth $600,000, and they have dropped East King Road widening project worth $250,000. So those eliminated projects are reflected, and the additions are that Lower Woolsey Road and resurfacing projects. Now, how do we share the Stockbridge overhead? So you can see the main change here is the two highlighted projects. Rock Quarry Road widening, $4 million. Rock Quarry Road extension, $2 million. I know Commissioner Thomas, that you wanted to know that specifically. So their projects add up to $30 million and some change.
And I think additionally, for the good of the board, they've also added $489,982 for resurfacing for Hudson Bridge and Eagles Landing Parkway.
Okay.
At this time, we'll pause for any questions from the board.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Holmes?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. When we originally started talking about T-Splosh, I thought T-Splosh would be tremendous for the county. We would have an opportunity to resurface a number of local roads where there are significant, severe potholes countywide, a number of intersection improvements, and also citizens have been requesting, quality of life transportation options such as sidewalks and walking paths. But as I look at this particular list, there is no benefit to citizens from Fairview to Ola. This project list is specifically geared to improve areas where we have a number of warehouses and semi-trucks, and I just don't see why the citizens would pay an extra penny sales tax and get no investment back into their own communities. It makes absolutely no sense to me. So Fairview Road, when I got elected a number of years ago, I had, I think, $13 million for Fairview Road. I immediately wanted to widen it. BJ Mathis said, just do it in sections. So that's what I did. And I think as a district commissioner, you have the option of investing those funds in the areas where the greatest needs are. I don't know the areas that have the greatest needs in District 1 or District 3 or District 2 or District 4, but I know my area because I've been talking to those people for a number of years, and I know what they want. There is nobody, I guarantee you, there is nobody in Fairview that would vote for T-Splosh. And if you look all the way down 155 going to Ola, there's no benefit for any of those citizens in any area of Henry County other than the warehouse community. So I don't support this list. I think there are some decent projects in incorporated areas of Henry County, but in unincorporated areas of Henry County, this is a very poor list.
Would you like to take this?
Any other comments, Commissioner Clemens?
I would like to make a suggestion on the allocation with the 5 districts. If you could go back to the wording on that, where you have the 10 million that's separated between the 5 districts. If you could go back to that.
If we can go back to the computer screen, please.
Okay, well, we have countywide road resurfacing. It will be used for sidewalks and intersection improvements. I would like to add pedestrian bridges and bike paths as well. And that's only because as we widen the roads in those high-traffic areas, we've got shopping and restaurants and all that stuff. We still need pedestrian bridges for people to be able to get across those streets. And so I would definitely like to see us be able to use funds for pedestrian bridges and bike paths in the county.
Sherry, do you have a list of the streets that are going to be resurfaced from the $27 million that we have allocated or voted before? And can you put that up for me by district so we can see what how it is broken up in districts for us, the resurfacing that is already underway with regards to our roads in Henry County.
I actually have something loaded on the computer I was going to present during my county manager comments, so I can go through it now. Because I know that there had been some questions regarding resurfacing, and I wanted the board to be aware of a couple of things that were going on. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So what I've compiled with our SPLOS team is a list of all of the projects that are scheduled to be resurfaced this year and into the beginning of next quarter. I'll go through it fairly quickly because it's quite a few rows. And in District 1, you'll notice, and I want the board to be aware that there are multiple funding sources. There's LMEG funding, there's funds that were left over from previous SPLOS programs that this board voted to consolidate so that we could get these resurfacing projects completed. So under District 1, you have Racetrack Road, South Ola Road, McDonough Parkway, Heron Bay Boulevard. Well, McDonough Parkway, Heron Bay Boulevard have both been completed. So those are completed projects that have already been done under this program or under the various programs. We have Laney Road, Jackson Lake Road, which is actually shared with District 3. And then we have Jake Lewis Road, Sandy Ridge Road, LG Griffin Road, Autumn Lake Drive, Lake Terrace, Autumn Lake Way, for a total of $5.5 million. That's 16 roads in District 1. Again, we have Lake Court Drive, Autumn Lake Road, South Bethany, and then Iris Lake Drive. In District 1, this is just the various funding sources. I won't go through all of it, but it totals that $5.4 million. So if the community is wondering where the funds are coming from, it's our LMEG allocations, SPLOS 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then if we had any joint partnerships with the respective cities, the funding source is listed as well. And then we do have a list, general fund, if needed. In the event that these projects come back more than what we've projected, we've already taken into account what we will need from general fund to complete the projects, but we don't foresee that to be an issue. Under District 2, we have 6 roads totaling about $4.6 million. They're Newmorn, Jodico Road, Blackhall Road, Gloucester Drive, I hope I didn't mispronounce that, and then Hampton LG, and then Wycliffe Drive. Again, that's $4.5 million. The different funding sources are LMEG, SPLOS 4 and 5. If you'll notice, there's no SPLOS 2 and 3 because those funds were already utilized, and so all that was left for District 2 is 4 and 5 funds. Under District 3, quite a few roads. I won't read through all of them, but just to give you an idea, we have Elliott Road, Jackson Lake Road, North Ola Road, East Lake Road, Honey Creek Road. We also have Christie Lane, Micah Drive 2, Lake Ridge Drive, Parker Road. And I'll make sure that this information is available on our website as well if anybody wants to go back and review it. District 3 also has another page of roads, Parker Drive, Beaver Run, Fallview Drive, Cold Spring, Clear Blue Way. For about $10 million, there are 33 roads that are scheduled to be resurfaced in District 3. Again, the funding sources vary. You have LMEG funds. There was funding left over from SPLOS 3, SPLOS 4, and SPLOS 5. Again, if we need general fund, we'll need about $243,000 to complete those projects. Keep in mind, and I want to reiterate, these are all projects that have been approved by the board that will be resurfaced this year through the beginning of the first quarter of next year. Under District 4, you have various roads, Clearwater Court, Riverwalk, Cotton Creek Court, Streamside Drive, Branchview Court, Clyde Court, Cotton Creek Drive again. We have Vintage Trail, Old Ivy Path, Chateau Trace, Waterford Lane, Castle Rock, Vine Circle, for a total of $3.1 million, 33 roads. Quite interesting, I think District 3 had 33 roads at $10 million and District 4 has 33 roads at $3 million. And so District 4 is set to have 33 roads resurfaced under the funding sources that have been identified. Again, District 4 is similar to District 2 in that there were no SPLOS 2 and 3 funds available, but there are SPLOS 4 and 5 funds that will be allocated to resurfacing, and then about $500,000 in LMEG funds from 2021. And it doesn't look like we'll need any general fund dollars for District 4. Under District 5, we have Hearn Road, Alston Road, Cook Road, Fairview Road, Blackhall Road, and Scarborough Road. We also have Santa Fe Trail, Rock Island, Chesapeake Drive, Rio Grande Trail, a total of 12 roads totaling $4.25 million for District 5. Again, the funding sources are LMEG, SPLOST 4, and SPLOST 5. And then if general fund dollars are needed, $980,000, so about $4.2 million. And so as you can see, we have quite a few projects that are ongoing or set to be moving within this current fiscal year. I believe Rocky told me that they're actually in District 4 right now working on resurfacing projects, but they are moving as quickly as possible to try to get these roadways resurfaced. So I will again share this information with the board and make sure that it's posted on our website as well.
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how many square miles Henry County is?
More than 300, it's about 331 square miles.
So the resurfacing that you showed, does that cover over 320 square miles?
No, sir, absolutely not, because there are a number of roadways that don't have to be paved. There are some districts that have no dirt roads, no resurfacing that's needed.
So my question is, are there roads that are in significant disrepair that need to be resurfaced that aren't funded?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
There are a number of them, more than that's on this list, correct?
So it depends on how you define number. We have a system right now that our DOT team is working with where we're actually rating all of our roads. And I'll be honest with you, Commissioner, I think in the past, and I don't want to point the finger at previous commissioners, the commissioners had the ability to determine where those resurfacing dollars were going to go.
Correct.
We should be
Correct.
resurfacing based on those roads that are failing. And
that's
so
the
we
reason
have roads that have been resurfaced that probably didn't need to be resurfaced, but they were.
Finish. So we're talking about using funds from past SPLOST to fund roads that, currently need to be resurfaced, right? And so we prioritize based on the damage, the damage that's done to a particular road and the pressure that we're receiving from our constituents. Am I correct?
That is not how our SPLOST department allocates roads.
Okay.
We grade our roads, and that's how the funds are
Yeah,
allocated.
but at the end of the day, the commissioner determines what roads need to be resurfaced on the SPLOST list.
That's a question
That's
or a
just
comment?
That's how it's been for years. And when we put roads on the list and we're not able to fund those roads, for various reasons, maybe there's an increase in material costs or increase just to resurface the roads, we have to take the road off the list so we can get, a road that we've prioritized a little bit higher done. Am I correct or am I not correct? That's why we've taken money from past SPLOSTs to fund the roads that you currently have on the list. And another thing I saw, you have a number of roads on the list that you showed, and you had 70,000, 61,000 to resurface the road. So I don't know how much road we're resurfacing for $70,000, just a section. I don't know if you just put those roads on the list to make the list look longer or what. But just to give you an idea, Belmont Farms is gravel. It's going to cost about $1.5 million to resurface just that subdivision. Austin Road from Scarborough to Fairview Road, that's $1 million project. So if we only receive about $500,000 apiece per district from LMEG annually, period, to resurface roads. I put my whole allocation on Black Hall and Spear Road when I have many other needs. So you're going to tell me we're going to approve a T-SPLOST for the warehouse industry, and I have money left over to repair roads in our district? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And to sit up here and give us a presentation about roads that are funded from a previous SPLOST, it's a stupid presentation. It makes no sense. We're talking about voting for a new SPLOST in November, and that's for roads down the road. By the time that SPLOST hits the ballot, there are going to be far more potholes around this county that need to be repaired. There are going to be far more roads that need to be resurfaced. We already have an issue with intersections because the way the intersections were designed years ago. Those intersections need to be improved, period. So to give that presentation, it's crazy. I don't even know who told you guys to give that particular presentation. It makes no sense.
May I respond? Yes. Are you finished, Commissioner Holmes? Because I want to cut you off.
I'm
Because
done.
I want to respond to some of your questions. And let me start with, you made the comment that it's a stupid presentation. Well, I'll say this publicly. I'm offended by that. And let me tell you why I'm offended. Because our staff has worked diligently to make sure that roads are being improved in the county. And you are correct. Commissioners have had their hand in it to determine where the funds are going, which means a number of the much-needed projects haven't been accomplished. And so because this T-SPLOS list doesn't give the commissioners the ability to split it 5 ways, and let me finish, Commissioner Holmes, please, because I gave you the respect. It truly represents a comprehensive transportation plan that previous boards approved. It's based on methodology that's in place. These are our priorities, Commissioner. We are looking at major projects that will provide some much-needed traffic relief. If your desire is to pave roads, to fix potholes and do things of that nature, then in the SPLOS program, your funding should have gone towards resurfacing. You put a lot of your funding towards capital. You put funding in Village Park. And so please understand that we do allow the boards for SPLOS programs to decide where those funds are going. But you all asked us to provide to you all a project list of our much-needed transportation improvements. And I differ with you in terms of the list being wasted. Please understand, when you resurface a road, sometimes you don't need the whole road resurfaced. There are areas of a road that need to be resurfaced. So if your argument to me is, well, Sherry, this is misleading the public, I don't mislead the public. These are the facts. These are the roads that you all have identified as priorities. That's what each commissioner. Our team sits down with you all every year, and we ask you, or at least we provide to you all, an LMEG project list. And we say, these are the roads that we have gone out, we've assessed, and we've determined that they failed. And each one of you all commissioners have an opportunity to make a decision and say, hey, either I'm going to support what you all are presenting, or I have heard from my constituents, and I believe this road is the priority. And so you and I will differ. But what I'm not going to back down on, Commissioner, is that the list that we are providing for T-SPLOS is not the best list, because it is. It represents the needs of the community. And I beg to differ, because you mentioned, the OLA community is not represented. Well, State Route 81, that's the OLA community. When you talk about District 5, Fairview Road, that runs straight through District 5. And so every district has some representation. But to say Jonesboro Road, Mill Road, McDonough Parkway, that's providing relief to industrial corridors, I disagree with you on that. Those are major thoroughfares that I'll challenge you every day to come and sit here at 12 o'clock and watch the traffic that's backed up along these major roads. So you and I will disagree on that, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. What I'm asking the board today is to determine if this is the list. If it's not, you all tell us what you want to see. But I am telling you that this list wasn't done because these are the roads that we want done. It was done because we have a comprehensive transportation plan that identified major transportation projects, and we have a $1 billion deficit in terms of making improvements to our infrastructure.
So at the end of the day,
Yes, sir.
The reason why SPLOS funds have been divided evenly amongst districts, because citizens need to feel that they're getting something in return. And on this particular list, citizens aren't getting anything in return for the tax that we're trying to implement in November. So I can tell you right now, my community will probably be voting no on this.
And that's fair.
I'm pretty sure other communities will too.
That's fair. But
So
I can tell you right now, Commissioner, as a
aren't-
taxpayer,
they're
I'll be
not-
voting for the list.
See, I gave you respect. You're not giving me any respect.
Okay.
But I'm just letting you know, as a taxpayer, to increase the sales tax to 8%, it's not going to fly with most citizens if they're not going to receive anything in return in their communities.
So we're going to move forward with the vote. I'd like to call for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Thomas, second by Commissioner Clemens. We've had the discussion we're going to have. I'd like to call for the vote. All in favor? Okay.
I just want to make one statement to make sure that the citizens are clear. We're not voting for T-SPLOS today. We're voting to put it on the ballot.
That's correct.
And I think that it's important that we continue to operate our county with democracy and allow the citizens to make their own decision. So I just want to make that clear that this vote is for the citizens to vote.
So Commissioner Clemens, this is just for the IGA. The vote will be the second meeting in July.
Okay,
But that's
so this
what,
is
your point
so
taken.
this is for
yes.
the IGA.
Yes, ma'am.
This
This
is
only,
just
that's
us
all
to
you're doing
go
today.
into agreement with the cities. Okay, so all in favor? Okay, and all opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Boys and Girls Club agreement.
Madam Chair, the Board of Elections is before that.
Oh, is that, oh, I'm sorry, Board of Elections.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Board. As you are aware, the Henry County Board of Elections and Registration was created by a local legislative act back in 2006. The way the Board of Elections was composed by that act is that there are 5 members, 2 members each appointed by the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The 5th member, who is referred to as the member at large, is appointed as follows, and I will read directly from the 2006 law. The 5th member of the board shall be appointed by a committee formed for such purpose by the governing authority of Henry County, period. So the resolution before you forms that committee and specifies the manner in which appointments are made, and what I have drafted is a resolution that forms a committee and allows each member of this Board of Commissioners to appoint a member to that committee by giving written notice of that to the county clerk. I put a deadline of July 9th on that, which I understand is Friday. I just wanted to have a deadline. The current member at large, his term has expired. He is continuing to serve as what's referred to as a holdover member, which the legislation specifies that if a new appointment's not made, he'll continue to carry on his duties until a new member is appointed. But I also know that I think everybody is eager for the new member to be appointed so that the board can resume conducting its normal business. So that's the resolution before you. Again, the resolution conforms with what the law requires us to do, and it would call for the appointment. Each of you name a member to that board. That board would then meet, conduct whatever search it's going to conduct, and appoint the 5th member of the Board of Commissioners. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
Patrick, how long did the person that's leaving, how long did he serve on the elections board?
I don't know exactly. I would say the better part of 15 years.
15
He has been a
years.
member a long time, and I may have that amount, but it's been a long while.
So I've been here for a minute too, and I recall the Board of Commissioners making that selection every single time since I've been on that particular board, or most of the time. But
I can tell you the last two, 2013 and 2017, the board created the committee. I didn't look back. I haven't looked back and seen how it's been done every time.
but the board has the option to select the member, correct?
Well, the board must appoint a committee.
Correct.
Right, there must be a committee. The law does not prohibit the board from appointing itself as a committee. So you could appoint yourselves as a committee. The resolution I drafted called for the committee to be composed of non-elected people, people that are not subject to election, because obviously this board will run your elections, and I thought it would be best to have some separation between elected officials and the member appointed to that board.
But there was no problem in the past, given that the majority of the board was Republican, so there was a Republican that went into that seat.
Yeah,
So
I have no idea if, I don't know if anybody's political affiliation that was associated back then. I just don't know.
Well, I'm sure you do. However, I don't understand why we need to select a committee when we are the committee. And we can just appoint, with the majority of Democrats on the board, we can put a Democrat in that seat. So why do we need to select a committee?
Well, the law requires you to select a committee. Again, you could appoint, you have to take 2 steps. If the board chooses to appoint itself as committee, you would need a resolution to appoint yourselves as committee, and then you would need a subsequent resolution of the committee appointing the members. So yes, you could do it that way.
I think that's what we need to do. I mean, I think the board needs to appoint itself as the committee, and then we need to move forward with selecting whoever we want.
And if you choose to do that, it would be simple. You'd make a resolution, make a motion just like you
And it's a done deal.
specified. And if that's what the board approves, we'll reduce it to writing. And then we'll schedule a meeting of that committee to coincide with the regular meeting of the board, so you don't have to show up twice. But it could be done that way.
All right.
But the resolution I drafted contemplates an outside committee to be appointed. Each one of you appoints one member, so you could have the same makeup of that committee that you have of this board, even if it was other members.
So, Patrick, if a commissioner does not want to serve on that committee, could that commissioner appoint someone?
Absolutely. I mean, I think whatever mechanism this board chooses for the selection of a committee is okay. I mean, that's whatever this board elects. And you could even go.
It may be some commissioners that want to serve on the committee. It may be others that do not. I know I do not want to serve on the committee.
Right.
And I know that there are some other commissioners that do not want to serve on the committee. But those commissioners that do want to serve on the committee, then that's their prerogative to do so.
So what you could do, and this would accomplish what both of you are seeking, is the resolution before you. Paragraph number 4 has qualifications for appointment. The only qualifications were resident of Henry County, and then there were some prohibitions. One of those prohibitions were any person who holds any local, state, or federal elected office. So you could simply amend the resolution as drafted to eliminate section 4B, and that would allow each of you to appoint whomever you choose, including yourself, to the committee. You notify the clerk by, and again, I put July 9th, but I just put that date.
Because we're past the date that we should have had this
Right.
done.
I think the Board of Elections as an
Right.
entity wants this to happen.
So we do
quicker
need
as
to
well.
move forward, and whether commissioner wants to appoint themselves or appoint someone else, they have until Friday to do that. And if they don't, then we'll move forward with whoever's on that committee. Commissioner Clemens.
I think it's important to note that in the past, the commissioners have selected the person because the way the resolution was written in 2006, it didn't prohibit them from being on the committee. But today, this resolution has changed to what was in 2006, and this resolution added prohibiting us from serving.
Right.
And I think it is important that everybody on this board know that today's resolution took us out of position to be able to make that decision, where before, commissioners have always been able to serve. So I want to thank Commissioner Holmes for bringing it to attention, and I want to make sure that this board knows that this resolution was removing us from making that decision. And so I'm glad it was brought up so that we can take that out, because every time in the past, the board has been able to do it.
Well,
and this was changing
but the
it.
board hasn't in the past. I mean, the board, in theory, could have appointed itself. I think the last couple of committees that were appointed were only 3 members. So there's been a lot of different ways it's been done over the years. So, but you're absolutely right. The prohibition that I inserted, I inserted that, and that's why you have to approve it. If you don't like that provision, pulls out, it's not a resolution until you approve it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have this resolution amended to remove the items restricting the board's participation completely from here, and then let us move forward. That way a board member can participate or choose someone to participate.
And that would be the removal of section 4B.
Yes.
Under the agreement.
And if there's
under the
anything else
resolution.
in there that restricts our participation, please make sure it is removed as well.
Now, another thing you need to be aware of, if any of you choose to appoint yourself, is this resolution, again, I just had to fill in some blanks, calls for this committee to meet no later than July 14th. If that date is not going to work with any of you, then let's amend that date now, because I want to make sure that if it needs to happen a week later, or if you want to make it happen in conjunction with the second meeting in July, I just would like the resolution to reflect reality.
Yes, Commissioner Clemens.
4B1 and 2. 2 is new as well.
Well, 4B, the whole thing is.
Okay, I just want to make sure we remove all of that.
Yeah, I would recommend if you want to reserve the right to appoint yourselves, let's just remove 4B in its entirety.
Okay. All right, and then also to amend it, also with changing the date to the second meeting in
Okay.
July.
Any other questions, comments? So we have, can I get a motion on the amended?
The motion is on the floor to accept this resolution with the corrections that have been cited, to remove item 4B completely from it, and any other items that restricts participation of the Board of Commissioners from participating on this committee. And the date selected, Commissioner Clemens, was
The second meeting in July.
second meeting in July.
And that's paragraph 6, that says the committee shall meet no later than July 14th, 2021. We will revise that to be the committee shall meet no later than July 20th to organize itself. So my recommendation would be we make that meeting at, say, 6:15. Maybe just have the members show up 15 minutes before the regular board meeting starts and take care of this initial bit of business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A
Okay, so
second.
we got a second from Commissioner Clemens. Any further discussion? None, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Boys and Girls Club agreement.
Sherry.
So, good morning again, Board. We are bringing back the resolution that was approved on June 2nd, 2021 with the Boys and Girls Club, because we need to get some clarification from the board in terms of the intent of payment in the programming years. We did send the agreement to the Boys and Girls Club, and they had concerns, as the current agreement currently states, that the funds for, and let me just read it, I don't want to paraphrase. The county agrees to authorize the transfer of the prior funds from BGCG, which is Boys and Girls Club of Central Georgia, to Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta for the 2021 programming year, and to further provide funding for the McDonough-Henry County Boys and Girls Club in the amount of $150,000. The question that is on the table is that paragraph states that the funds that were previously paid by the board or previously paid by the county would go towards the current 2021 program year. And what that means is that any funds that we have allocated for this current fiscal year would not be paid to the Boys and Girls Club. And so I need to get some clarification so we can get this agreement amended to accurately reflect the intent of the board. So the question that I'm asking the board, is it or was it your intent to provide $150,000 to the Boys and Girls Club for this current fiscal year, in addition to what was already being transferred from Central Georgia Boys and Girls Club? Or was it the intent of this board for the funds that were transferred from Central Georgia to go towards 2021?
So then I have a question.
Okay.
The funds that were transferred from Central Georgia we're supposed to be, according to our agreement, 3 years of programming.
That is correct. We are supposed to pay to them $450,000.
So it's but that would be 3 years of programming.
That is correct.
Okay. So they haven't opened. We don't know, do we have a start date as to when they are projected to open? Because if they've already received the 150 from Central Georgia, that would be our first programming year.
Madam Chair, if I could, I'm going to take a quick aside before we address that question. One of the issues that has arisen between the draft that was presented to this board and approved and what the Boys and Girls Club wants is how the Central Georgia transferred funds are treated. The Boys and Girls Clubs have said that they need that set at that $150,000 not to be programming money, but instead to be startup money. So what they have said they want is the $150,000 from Central Georgia to be transferred immediately for startup money, and then the county would then pay another $150,000 for the first programming year and another $150,000 for the second programming year. What I had been led to understand, now I wasn't involved directly in any real meaningful discussions about how the program was work. What I was led to believe is that Central Georgia's money would be programming year number 1. Our money would then be programming year number 2, programming year number 3. So I think that's really the question we need to answer.
So the question is, what does the resolution say?
The draft that you approved, the one that the Board of Commissioners approved, treats the Central Georgia money as years 1 programming, and then you'll pay year 2 programming, year 3 programming. They want to sort of shift that over, where Central Georgia is startup, and you're paying for 2 years of programming. So that's what the question is.
That's not what our agreement is. We agreed to do 3 years of programming, nothing about startup, nothing about operational costs, 3 years of programming.
So the question remains. So that means that we will not provide to them $150,000 payment this year because we're taking the funds from the Central Georgia as program year number 1. Is that correct? That's what we need some clarification on.
Well, that's what it should be.
Okay, was that the intent? Because if not, we need to know, because I need to know if we need to cut them a check August 1st for this upcoming year. What it sounds like is, or at least what I'm seeing, is that the 150 from Central Georgia is for 2021, and then another 150 for 2022, and another 150 for 2023.
Well, we're saying 2021, and they hadn't even opened up yet. So,
Right,
you know, if we're talking programming years, then it should be when they open, when the programming year starts.
Okay.
So are they going to be open in 2021? Commissioner Clemens.
So I think the issue is not the amounts. The amount doesn't change. The county still owes, based on the agreement, $300,000. The only thing that Boys and Girls Club is saying is that they were expecting the next year, this year. That's all they're saying. They were expecting the second payment this year. When Sherry stood before the board to do the budget, I said, Sherry, do you have the $150 for this year in the budget for Boys and Girls Club? And she said yes. So the money is there for this year. They're simply saying that they need the second year now that we have promised. The reason they need the second year now is because they could not open last year due to COVID. Because of COVID, they have to put new things in place for the kids and all of this stuff. So the $150 from Central Georgia is helping to get open, and then this year's programming money, which we were due to pay, is needed. Based on the county's thing, Patrick wrote it up that they weren't going to give them this year. So that is the problem. The club will open August, whatever the first day of school is. It is set to open. I can tell you that a press release is getting ready to come out in the next week or two. All board members are open to calls, Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, to talk to the guy. We can get him on a conference call. The club is scheduled to open August. Everything has been done to get ready to open, and that's the school system's understanding. That's all of the board's understanding, that the club is opening in August. And I can tell you 98% the club is opening in August. Everything has moved forward. The executive director has been hired. The only thing that they're doing now is getting the building ready. And the county owes $150 this year based on the resolution that we approved a year ago. And what the county did is saying, we're not going to pay you this year. We're going to let the money from Central Georgia be that money for this year, and we're only going to give you another $150. Well, then that would distort the agreement of $450,000. It's not any more money. They're just saying they need the $150 this year that's supposed to go. And Patrick and Sherry, you can tell me if that's your understanding too.
So I'm clear on that, and
Yeah.
we have budgeted, and I've been very clear about that. The funds are available in this current fiscal year. What I have is an agreement that doesn't say that.
Right.
And so that is what we need to clean up. We got to clean that up.
The problem that I have is that we're paying money for a program that has been non-operational. So we're using county funds, taxpayer dollars, for a program that has been non-operational. If we're not open, then why are they due another $150,000 for something, a programming that they haven't even started? If our agreement is for 3 years of programming, we can give them the whole $450, but they need to guarantee us 3 years of programming, period.
And I think that's the agreement.
Well, it needs to say that in the agreement, that this is not for operational and opening and all of that. This is for 3 years of programming. If that is the case, then, you know, it just needs to say that they're going to give us 3 years of programming.
So I think, and definitely I want to hear from the whole board, if that is what you're saying, then this agreement needs to be amended to just reflect the county is responsible for an addition, for $300,000 is the balance that's due. In return for that, the county is requiring that you all have the Boys and Girls Club open from 2021 through 2023. That would be 3 years of programming. In the event that the club does not open, ceases to exist, those funds will be repaid to the county. But it needs to be in this agreement because they're not comfortable signing it, and I'm not comfortable cutting the check because it doesn't align with the agreement. And so if that's the intent, we can clean that up and fix it. But I want the board to understand we're not paying any additional monies. The board agreed back in 2019, 2020 to provide $450,000 to the Boys and Girls Club, and we are still honoring that commitment. So I'll pause and.
It needs to say that we're going to have 3 years of programming. That needs to be added in there.
I can make that revision.
Okay.
I will point out that based upon what I have heard from the lawyer representing the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, that what the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta wants is $150,000 every single programming year. So it sounds like we're proposing, the way they proposed it, let me walk backwards a little bit. They proposed that the Central Georgia funds are 2021 programming year. And that every programming year thereafter, we would write a check for $150,000. So what I'm hearing this board say is that we're going to write 2 more checks and get 3 years of programming. So we're 1 year off from what they want, which I'm okay with them wanting something different than we want, because my only obligation is to figure out what this board wants and present it to them. So the question seems to be they want $450,000 from the county, new money from the county for 3 years, and we want to give them $300,000 for 3 years. So I can certainly draft it the way that you've described, which I would prefer, and we'll see if it works for what their proposal is.
Commissioner Thomas.
Well, that's what they've sent to me. Whether that's, and I think that's part of the problem. I don't mind saying, I think what part of the problem is both I and the attorney representing them are hearing about what a deal was third or fourth hand, and it's probably getting lost in translation, which is why we're in front of the board trying to find out directly what the board chooses.
Commissioner Thomas.
My question is, have we paid them anything?
Yes, ma'am. We did pay them yes, $150,000 was paid to Central Georgia. Central Georgia has agreed to transfer the $150,000 that we paid to Metro Atlanta chapter. So $150,000 has been paid to a Boys and Girls Club on behalf of Henry County.
But we've not received the 1 year service for that $150,000 yet. So my question, why are we cutting another check and we haven't received the first set of services?
Which is why we're standing here, because I think Metro Atlanta chapter's intent was for the county to cut them a check this year. That was the intent. So I hear you. Yes, I can't answer why they haven't opened.
So I cannot be accountable for what they want. What I want to be accountable for is what we will do based upon an agreement. Okay. When a program year is ready to function and operate, then we should live up to our agreement. So they need to operate the first year for the first $150,000, so we can have something to evaluate before we start putting out another $150,000 for another year. Now, if that's what we agreed to for programming, in my mind, that's what should happen. Now, if you're saying that they are now wanting to take programming money to turn it into seed money and operational money and administrative money, that's a problem because they should have all that covered. This is not their first rodeo. The Boys and Girls Clubs know how to operate. They have a fund. They know how to do this. So the question is one thing, what do we agree to? Did we agree to seed money? Did we agree to programming? What do we agree to? And we need to live up to what we agreed to, not up to what they're requesting.
Commissioner Cannon? No, Commissioner Holmes?
Well, there's no agreement until we enter to agree. Right. I mean, so what, yeah. Takes all of us to agree. So Sherry's question was, the first agreement being the one that you approved, I think in June, is moot. Well, it's not an agreement yet. It's not an agreement till both parties sign it.
Not before Chair Harrell was on the board.
The Central Georgia Club.
That is
the Central
dissolved.
Georgia agreement is resolved in the new.
That's what I
agreement.
needed clarification.
The new, when this board and Metro Atlanta make an agreement, Central Georgia is part of that agreement because we need them to transfer their money.
Okay.
And that agreement terminates their old agreement.
So do we have an agreement? That's what I'm asking you.
Not
then.
with Metro Atlanta. Yeah, no.
We have an agreement with who then?
With Central Georgia.
And
The
we
old
gave a
agreement with
check
Central
to-
Georgia.
And we gave a check to Central Georgia.
Yes. Back in
So Central Georgia has
2019.
$150,000 that they can send to Atlanta
Correct.
to open the programming on our behalf.
Right, but on June 2nd of this year, this board did approve a resolution approving a grant award agreement. Metro Atlanta chapter has not executed the agreement. So the board has approved it, but we have not received anything back from the Metro Atlanta chapter.
So we don't have an operating agreement.
I've never seen it.
We don't have one that operates today, no. I mean,
Because it has not been signed by all parties.
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, so that leaves us in a whole different genre of things, because we don't really have an agreement then to be starting trying to determine what to do. We need to coin an agreement.
Well, that's the reason we're here. This board approved an agreement in June. That agreement was transmitted to Metro Atlanta. They do not agree to that. So we're here to figure out if we need to revise that agreement to conform with what Metro Atlanta wants, or are we going to stick to our guns on the June agreement?
And also, just to make it a little more, Commissioner Thomas, we are not operating this Boys and Girls Club. We are just contributing funds to the Boys and Girls Club. And so the funds are available in our budget, but it will not be operated or managed by the county at all.
Well, they haven't made good on the first $150,000 because there has been no programming. So either Central Georgia returns the $150,000 back to us, and then we cut the $150,000 check to Metro Atlanta, or they send it directly to Atlanta, but that still would be the first year programming. I mean, the math is real simple, and the years are real simple. If our agreement was for 3 years of programming, I'm just trying to understand what and I understand what you're saying that Metro Atlanta is saying, but we never agreed for the money that was coming from Central Georgia to be used for operation.
Since we're talking about the Boys and Girls Club, can you guys give us an update on the Aquatic Center? I haven't heard anything about that recently.
So we have been going through back and forth conversations with the property owner, or at least the owner of record or representative for the property. As you know, this board did give me, or at least give the property owner, up until 60 days to provide or at least convey the property to the county. That has not happened. Patrick and I actually had a conversation yesterday, and we're going to try one other option, which is to potentially reach out to the attorney who represents the family to see, one, if there's a desire for them to move forward with this property. But as of today, I have not received anything beyond a survey regarding the property. And the one thing that I need to receive is a deed. I will also tell you that we do have an RFQ that's out, or RFP that's out for the Aquatic Center, and the proposals are due back to staff in the next 2 weeks. And so we've just been moving ahead on trying to move forward, so then once the deed was provided to the county, we'd be ready to start moving on the project. So that's all that I have today.
So let's move forward with this boys and girls thing here. We can deal with that Aquatic Center and your comments, but we've got this on the table, and let's move forward with this boys and girls resolution.
I think Commissioner Wilson has his hand up, Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. So I agree with Chair. We need to make it a two-way agreement instead of a three-way agreement. I'm not sure how we got tangled up in this web of Central Georgia, but if we can just get a rebate, get them to refund us the money here, then we make the agreement with the Metro instead of making it a three-way agreement. Let's make it simplified to a two-way agreement.
Which we could do. It leaves us with the same question, with the same point of contention with Metro Atlanta. So what Metro Atlanta's proposal to us, in response to us sending the agreement that this board authorized in June, they replied saying that this is what they want. They want the first $150,000 paid to them immediately. Now, I don't think nobody cares if that money comes to us from Central Georgia, we write a check to them, or if it goes straight. I don't think anybody cares about that. But what they want in addition to the transfer or that initial $150,000, they then want another $150,000 check for the 2021 programming. So, and then they want $150,000 each year thereafter. The question is how the initial $150,000, whether it comes from Central Georgia or whether we write the check, does that pay for 2021 programming or does that pay for something else? And what I'm hearing this board say is that should pay for 2021 programming, which is what the agreement we sent to them says.
Pretty simple.
And the next payment would be due when the next programming year begins. The first check we would physically write.
But they need to be basically open, though, before we send them $150,000.
So I would say, thank you, Patrick, you are not explaining from what me and Sherry understood. And Sherry, you please chime in. What they are asking is, and the agreement just needs to be rewritten. What they're saying is that the county pledged $450. They want $300 of the $450 now so that they can get open, and it will last for however long, which is what Chair is saying, and they only owed another $150. That's all. They're not asking for additional $450. They're not asking for, they're saying the $350 for Central Georgia would be one of them. We owe another $150 this year, and we'll have one more $150. Or whether we give them the $450 and say, we're gonna give you $450,000, but it is only for 3 years of programming. They don't care. They just wanna make sure that the county is committed to 3 years of program. That agreement says the county is only gonna do $300,000 and not the $450.
300,000 of new money, right? So
it's still $450.
Right. Well, let me tell you what their agreement said.
No. Yeah, that's what this board agreed to. $450.
Right.
And Sherry, go ahead.
And I think you and I agree. The board agreed to $450. The problem is the board is saying because they haven't started the program, they don't want me to proceed with paying them another $150,000.
So they're open. So what is that? So when they open in August, so is it October? When does that, the question today is.
That's what I need to answer.
There's only one question on the table today, board. When does the second 150 get paid? It's not about the amount of money. It's not about new money. The only question that they're asking is, when will they receive the second 150? And the reason that they're asking is because of staffing. When do they receive the second 150? Do they receive it in October? Do they receive it, whenever? Chair Harrell said, well, when are they opening? I just said that they're gonna open August 9th. And Chair Harrell, you can say 60 days after you open, you can get the other 150, or 12 months after you open, you get the other 150. But today, the board needs to decide, when is the next 150 due? That's the question.
Patrick.
And I think
Patrick, what I need to have in that contract is to say that we get 3 years of programming. Right. Period.
And Commissioner Clemens, the draft they sent me, I don't know what the business people wanted, but the draft that they sent me calls for us to pay $450,000 for 2 years of programming. That's what the draft.
That's not what we sent to them.
What we sent to them said $450,000 for 3 years of programming.
Right.
They rejected that. They said, no, that is not our deal. I'm looking at their draft right in front of me. I have no idea what the business people discussed,
It
okay?
doesn't matter what they say. We say $450 for 3 years of programming.
Okay.
So that's what the contract needs to say.
Yeah.
Which is what our agreement says now.
And it needs to say $450 for 3 years of program, and when the second payment will be given.
That is what I need an answer to.
So that really does boil down to the question.
That's what I need to know.
So I don't have a problem with 60 days after they're up and operational. I just don't want to send another 150 and they still hadn't opened the doors. And they already got 150 already.
So I'd like to make a recommendation, Chair, that Patrick would redraft the agreement to say that the county is committed to 3 years of programming money at $450,000. They will use the 150 that they already have from Central Georgia, and that they will receive the second payment 60 days after the club is open and operating. That's what I would like to propose, Chair Harrell.
And if I could walk through how a little further out and make sure everybody understands. So our second payment of $150,000. First payment of $150,000 will go immediately from Central Georgia. Our second payment will be due 60 days after they open the club. Our third and final payment would be due a year after our first payment. That's how I would recommend it.
Correct.
So that third payment is only their second year of operation. So they're going to have to operate another year without another check. Mm-hmm. That is not what they are saying. We get $150,000 every year. What we're saying is we're sort of shifting the money back. So we're basically paying each year way, way in advance. So they're going to come to us, I'm going to predict right now, in year 3, and they're going to say, where's our check? And we're going to say, we gave you that check a year ago. That's where I think in the future we're going to have a problem.
I think we should say that in the third year, they have to come back before the board and ask, and based on the performance, based on if the board that is here then wants to continue the agreement, then that board will make that decision. That's not our issue right now.
Right.
Well, they still owe us 3 years.
Right.
So
And I
it needs
think
to say
this
3 years.
agreement
So
needs
if
to
they come
spell
back
out
in the
the
3rd
3
year
years.
asking for additional money, it'll be for a 4th year program and not for a 3rd year.
Correct.
Commissioner Wilson.
Just let them operate first 2 years off of this 60-day payment. Then we give them $150,000 on the 3rd year, so they'll have to operate 2 years off of $300,000. So how they make that gap between year 1 and year 3, that's not a problem.
So y'all are saying different things. Y'all, and that is why we're saying, because we are so confused.
I'd like to ask that this board, each one of the members of the board would talk to the executive director with Boys and Girls Club themselves and table discussion to them, because what I do know that I've been told by the executive director is that if they don't have $150,000 each year from the county, they cannot open. So whatever decision this board makes today, and that's why I would hesitate to have the board make a decision without talking to them, to understand operations, to understand how the money is being used, to understand why they need the money, where the money comes from. Boys and Girls Club of Atlanta does not put seed into your communities. Boys and Girls Club is a community-operated event. Every community that has a Boys and Girls Club, the community raises the money. The local community raises the money to have them. All they do is to come in and operate for you. But if you don't put the money up, you don't get a club. And I know and I will go on record saying, they have said, if the county is not going to participate every year for 150, they will not come to Henry County. And I would like for each board member, and Patrick is shaking his head, they have already told us. That's why I'm quiet, because I've heard it. Sherry, you've heard it. Patrick, you've heard it. They need this money in order to come to Henry County. The annual budget to operate a club in Henry County is $600,000 a year. And they're only asking the county for $150. City of McDonough has put up $150. The other $400,000 is coming from community partners and the board is having to raise money, the Boys and Girls Club board. So they're only asking the county for $150. If the county chooses not to give $150, the county will vote. Each commissioner up here will vote not to do it, and they will not come to Henry County. I would urge each member of this board to have a conversation, table this discussion before you make another decision, and talk to the executive director and ask them why do they need $150 from this county, and what are they going to do with it?
So, Commissioner Clemens, may I suggest that we have the executive director come to the next meeting so that everybody can hear the exact same message? Because I think it's just been, it's been so many conversations. I don't think it's distorted, but I think.
At the end of the day, we have given $150.
Understand, but I believe that there were commitments made that they would receive $150,000 this year. That's, and again, that is.
Did they not? Did they not?
So Central Georgia was due to transfer the funds within so many days of this agreement, I believe. Somewhere.
The agreement's never been executed, so there's no agreement.
Okay, then so can they send us the $150,000 back?
We can request that Central Georgia return the $150,000 to the county, but I don't think that answers the question, because even if they return it, all we're going to do is take that payment and give it to Metro Atlanta.
Correct.
What I'm hearing is that Metro Atlanta wants $150,000 from Henry County this year. Forget what's been given to Central Georgia. They want $150,000 for this year. And what I think I'm hearing from the board is that there is.
We cannot forget what we gave to Central Georgia.
I'm clear, which is why we're standing before you all so that we can get an understanding of what the intent was from this board. It sounds like to me, from the board members that have spoken, that your intentions, and I guess Chair Harrell, clarification from you, we're either gonna give them $150,000 in 60 days or not give them $150,000, because I've heard different things, and so I need to know what is the intent so that Patrick can make this agreement work the way that it needs to work. Now, y'all's intent is to do it the way that it is. We're fine. We don't need to change the agreement. But if we're now saying we're going to give them another $150,000 within 60 days of opening, this agreement will need to change. And I'm not making a decision. All I'm saying is we need to know what y'all's intentions are, because as you all are going through it, imagine we're as confused because we don't know what you all intended to do.
Okay, then so can we get the $150,000 back from Central Georgia?
We can certainly ask that of them. I think they were willing to transfer the monies over. If you remember, Central Georgia.
Because that's making it complicated. Because
Well,
they
I
don't
don't-
want
I
to
don't
count
think
the
that-
150. They don't want to count Central Georgia's 150 is what it sounds like.
No, they're counting it.
They
The
are.
question is whether or not we pay new money per programming year immediately, or whether we apply Central Georgia for year one programming fee. That's really what the ultimate question is. The agreement that you voted on said the Central Georgia money is 2021's programming year. We write a check for 2022 programming year, and we write a check for 2023 programming year. They said, no, we want the $150,000 from Central Georgia today, and we want you to write a check for $150,000 for the 2021 programming year.
And you only owe them another $150.
But we only get one more programming year. That was what their agreement said. Now, I don't know if that's what they told you, but that's what their agreement says.
That's not what our agreement says. Our agreement says 3 years of programming.
But there's no agreement until we all agree on the exact same thing. Right now, there is no agreement. Boys, I'm going to just tell you, Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta is saying we write a new check for $150,000 for every single year. Not that the Central Georgia money applies for a year. The Metro Atlanta Club wants the $150,000 not to count towards any year's programming. That's what their agreement says. Now, what What their business people want, I don't know, but the agreement they sent us says that the check we write counts for the 2021 programming year, not the check from Central Georgia.
Commissioner Cannon.
So my understanding, originally, the commitment from Henry County was $450,000.
Yes, and it still is.
So the cleanest, for one man's opinion, is get our 150 back, send them that 150, in a year pay them 150, in a year pay them 150. And then we will have stood by our word and our commitment of $450,000.
And what
if
I
they're
want
not
y'all to hear me
acceptab-
say,
If they don't accept that, then
yeah,
we
what
to
they have
regroup.
told us thus far is that amount of money does not work for them. That's what they've told me thus far by the drafts of documents they've sent us.
All right, we're just gonna table this and we'll.
Yeah, I think that's, and I can draft it the way, I'll draft it the way that you've suggested, and I'll draft it the way that Commissioner Clemens has suggested, and I can circulate it with the lawyers for Central Georgia, for Metro Atlanta, and just see if one of those, see if one of those catches.
Okay.
I'll see if they can be available
All
for
right.
the next meeting in July.
We'll table. Next item on the agenda is the ordinance by the Henry County Board of Commissioners amending section 8.04.02.e Stormwater Management Plan requirements of the Code of the Henry County to require fencing around permitted stormwater management ponds.
Good morning still. So at the request of your Stormwater Department, I drafted an ordinance to amend Section 8.04.02 of the Stormwater Management Plan requirements to require a fencing around all detention ponds that hold more than 4 feet of water during a rain event. That's what this resolution would require. The current county ordinance has no requirement for fencing around detention ponds. That's the ordinance before you. Mr. Mahadra is here. He can answer the detailed technical questions about the why and the how, and much better than I can. So that's the resolution before you, and I think we'll take whatever questions you have.
So you require a 6-foot fence, but you don't say what type of fence?
Good morning. Correct. Either chain link fence or wood fence. We do not require the type of fencing.
Okay, the 6-foot fence versus a 4-foot fence. Now go back to where someone comes in and puts in an application to put in a pool. A pool typically is 8 foot deep, and the county requires them to put a 4-foot fence around their pool. So we have retention ponds that you said that exceed 4 feet, but we're asking them to put a 6-foot fence. So we got two different ordinances. You got a pool, you got to put a 4-foot fence, but if you got a retention pond, you got to put a 6-foot fence. Now, for those properties that developers have creeks and ponds on, are you requiring them to put a fence around the ponds that's already on the property as well? I mean, they could be well over 4 feet. So I'm confused of why we want to put them around a retention pond, but we won't require them a 6-foot fence around a retention pond, and we won't require them to put a fence around a lake or a pond that may be on the property when they develop it.
Correct. Commissioner, if I may, I would like to compare a detention pond or retention pond with a swimming pool. A lot of the ordinances for building and development ordinances, they require a 4-foot fence around the swimming pool. And the nature of the swimming pool is usually within a residence or a homeowner association clubhouse. And it is a regulated man-made structure. The bottom of it is concrete. It has steps or ramps or ladders. It's lit. A lot of times there's a lifeguard there, sometimes at the homes. It is something that the residents know that they do have the swimming pool, and most of the time the swimming pool has water in it. Now, comparing that to a detention pond, which is a temporary pondage, or retention pond, which is permanent. Ponds, they do possess a couple of characteristics that they are dangerous. One is the side slopes of the ponds that we require 3 feet horizontal to 1 foot vertical, and they are muddy, they're overgrown. And another issue is how fast a dry detention pond gets inundated by stormwater during the storm event, and also the residence time of the water during the storm events and after the storm events. A lot of time it could take up to 18 hours. Now we require water quality channel protection that could require up to 48 hours of residence time. So, and these ponds are within very close vicinity of homes within the subdivisions and or commercial industrial areas. Now, I have had opportunity for the last 40 years to design ponds, 30 years as a professional person, both on the consultant side and the county city side. And I've never seen a detention pond without a fence. So a lot of municipalities, they do require that. Now, to answer your question, the ponds that we are going to, this ordinance to request permission that when we do permit a pond for us to require a 6-foot pond, 6-foot fence, the reason for that is these ponds could be in a hidden place. Children could climb the pond and fall into it. And if the water depth is more than 4 feet, that allows the child to stand in shoulder height, not to get drowned. So that's the reason between the 4-foot fence and a 6-foot fence comparing to swimming pool.
So how many retention ponds does the county have on county property?
The ones that the county
number
own,
of county property, retention ponds on county property, how many do we have?
I can get that number for you, but as we do speak, within next month, we are going to have a total inventory of all of our infrastructures, including ponds, county-owned and or privately owned pond, and their condition assessments.
So is it the stormwater's intention to fence in all the county's retention ponds, the existing retention ponds?
If we do have, if we do own and or operate a pond which is owned by the county, if it does not have the fence, then we would install the fence to meet the requirements of the
do we know what that cost is going to be? Because I think we need to lead by example, go ahead and fence ours in first before we ask developers to start putting fence around theirs. I think we need to look at our retention ponds first.
Yes, sir. Usually, based on my experience, the chain link fence put around the pond, which we can get a unit price per linear feet. But I have known a city that I had a privilege to work with. We did change the ordinance not to allow chain link fence, but allow to replace it with aluminum and wrought iron fence, which was a multiple of expense, and it was accepted pretty well by the council.
So we don't know how many is on county properties. You won't have that available soon? Could you email them to me, please, or all the commissioners?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We can do that.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do want to thank you for this resolution. This did come about because I asked Alex to look at this. The retention ponds ordinance in Henry County is so antiquated. And we do have the potential here to save lives. We're having children fall into retention ponds. Builders are gone. They build these retention ponds, and I call them holes with mud in them, and then they are gone. And then a lot of time in these ponds, we have all type of little creatures, especially snakes in them. In developments that I have put in District 4, I have now required them to make them environmentally friendly. Not just leave a hole, but make sure that hole is finished and becomes a part of the subdivision. Because we are finding that these developers are putting these detention ponds around, not putting any type of fencing around it, throwing some type of greenery in it, and then that's it. And that's not acceptable. And most time when you do have something like a pool, as stated before, it's done with some form of management, either by the homeowner or it's done by some form of management by either the HOA in that particular area. Retention ponds are not. And I think it's irresponsible of us to allow them to continue to dig these holes and leave them in the county. So I do support it, but I do want chain link fences around them and not an option for wood, because that wood will rot away so much faster than a chain link fence. I do support it being 6 feet because we want to make sure that little 4 feet child will have a harder time, I should say, to try to cross that fence more so than a 4-foot fence. So we want to do whatever we can to protect these children. And that's what's happening. They're going to these retention ponds, some of them thinking they can swim in them because they see water in it. They don't see the danger that we see in it. And because we have an ordinance now that allows builders to do what they choose with it, basically, we're leaving the possibility there for children to be hurt. So that's the reason why you have this before us. And I do think the county need to be an example of it. If it does cost us some money, we need to look at the fact that we need to fence in our retention ponds and be responsible as well, and not continually to have these places around. And I have seen some huge ones. They're just mounds of dirt around the edges and the water is sitting in the middle and no one is paying attention to it. We have to be more responsible. So I would like to see the fence be a chain link fence. I do like the fact that it's here for 6 feet. We need to make sure that developers know that when they put in their request to develop in Henry County. And I would like to see the county be responsible and be the first to participate and make sure that we fence in our retention ponds. It's safety. That's what it's for. It's for safety reasons.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. If there's no other discussion, I'd like to call. Yes, ma'am.
Is it chain link or wood, or it has to be chain link? Because if it is behind somebody's property, then that could be an issue with it being a chain link instead of wood based on the aesthetics of that property. So, are you recommending that it must be chain link, Alex?
Madam Commissioner, I have seen chain link and wood fence.
Yes, so I would like to be able to have it to be both an option.
The only reason I had said chain link because the wood wear away so fast and it rots away so fast, and that was the reason for saying chain link. But if someone wants to do wood, it needs to be. We need to put some wording in there to help with that. That if it's imposing upon a private property, and it complements that property to have more of a wood structure, they will have that option. But do not leave it open where you can just choose at will.
Well, Commissioner Thomas, I would say that from a homeowner who has a retention pond in the backyard, homeowners associations require you to upkeep it. And so I don't think that we should make a homeowner who has a retention pond on their property choose to have a chain link when they may choose to have a wood to accommodate what else is on their house. So if it is on a person's private property, then I think they should have a choice of chain link or wood.
Yes, Commissioner O'Connor.
I agree with Commissioner Clemens and Commissioner Thomas. I think that the concern is with some of the retention ponds that's not on private property necessarily, we lose the visibility of a child having gotten inside if it's fenced with wood. I think the chain link offers us a little more safety protection for children in the event that a child does get inside instead of it being hidden behind a wooden fence. But when it does pertain to private property, I think there should be an option.
If I may add, our stormwater department, they do make pond inspections. And they look at inside the pond if it needs cutting, or the outlet structure if it needs repair, and or the enclosures, including the fence. If it needs a repair, then we will write a letter informing the homeowner and or the operator, requesting them to fix it within certain time limit.
I think that's important, but that inspection is not going to take place within seconds of a child entering into that area. So
That's
I
a
think
discretion of the...
I think the safety is very important.
As long as it is enclosed, I'm satisfied as a designer to put my stamp on it, but the will of the body, is however you wish, we can proceed.
Yes.
On section 10, section 1, paragraph 10E, could you tell me what that intent is, please?
What is this?
Yes. 10E
requires, so let me walk backwards. 10A through D provides for the installation of a fence on a new pond. 10E says that existing ponds must be brought into compliance. They must install a fence. And we put within 12 months of the date of the adoption of the ordinance. Now, I think that number, that 12 months from the date of the adoption of the ordinance, like many things, I just put that in there. That might not be reasonable. That might not be sufficient time for a lot of detention ponds and retention ponds, because like Commissioner Clemens noted, a lot of these are on private property. So it may be that that needs to be extended, or perhaps the board doesn't want to impose that requirement. That's up to the board. So, but you know, if safety is a concern, existing detention ponds are just as dangerous as new detention ponds. So to only protect new detention ponds will leave the overwhelming majority of your detention ponds unprotected. So that's why I inserted the requirement that existing ponds be fenced as well. Now, whether that's what this board wants to do, that's up to this board. Whether this board wants to extend the time for compliance, that's acceptable as well. It also brings up a practical problem, just a practical problem. If I have a detention pond on my yard and I fail to fence it, or if portion of it is on my yard and I fail to fence it, not because I didn't want to fence it, but because my neighbors who own the rest of that pond didn't want to fix it, am I going to get in trouble? Now, I'll tell you my experience with our code enforcement officials is no. We're not going to cite, the property owner at house number 1 for not fencing it if houses number 2, 3, and 4 refuse to do it, or if it's an exorbitant expense on the owner of house number 1. And even if we did cite, and the magistrate court's not going to convict them because they're very practical about that. So going backwards and imposing this requirement on existing ponds is somewhat problematic from an enforcement standpoint. It's just going to be hard, if not impossible, to practically enforce it. So, and sometimes, there may not be funds to do it. Most neighborhoods, well, I don't want to say most, a lot of neighborhoods in this community do not have homeowners associations and cannot assess mandatory fees. There's a lot out there that don't do that. And in the absence of that mechanism, the owner of the land where that pond sits may be stuck with the cost of doing it. So from an enforcement standpoint, that's a difficult section. But from achieve the goal of this ordinance, it's almost necessary because, how many new ponds will be developed this year as in relation to how many exist? We've done an inventory or doing an inventory. I suppose there are thousands of retention ponds in the county. If the ordinance only applies to new ones, you're still going to have thousands of unprotected ones. So it's a tough spot to put us in.
So I need to recuse myself because I did not realize that this ordinance was going to enforce existing retention ponds to come up to code within so many days of homeowners that already have a retention pond that has been there for over 30 years. Now this is saying that if you have a retention pond, it's going to be your financial burden as a homeowner in this county to bring it up to this code. So because I am a homeowner with a retention pond in a HOA association that I'm responsible for, I've asked to recuse myself. So I'm stating my recusal.
Fair enough.
So would it be easier to just have the retention ponds where they wouldn't hold more than 4 feet of water? Wouldn't that be a lot easier and simpler?
I didn't hear you, Commissioner.
The ordinance says for any retention pond that holds 4 feet of water or greater. Wouldn't it be easier to design them where they hold less than 4 feet?
Commissioner, back in early 90s, I was part of the design team to develop the Georgia Design Manual, which was adopted in 2003. And as a result, all municipalities, they went ahead with these new ideas. The methodology that it was used in the past before we get involved, the detention ponds were designed as 1/4 or 1/5 of the size of existing ponds. Now, based on the Georgia EPD requirements for Clean Water Act, we had to employ the new design requirements for designing ponds. And as a result, these ponds, they grew to be humongous. And we did require, and we do require, a water quality which the first 1 inch of the rain has to attenuate inside the pond for 48 hours. You know, that by itself, it could rise the water elevation a couple of feet and stay to 48 hours. And then your channel protection all the way 100-year storm. To cut the story short, is that these new requirements, usually ponds, very hardly we can see them as a 100-year storm to be less than 4 feet. So I'm not saying that it is impossible. If it is, we don't require, as long as a child could stand chest deep and not to get drowned. But however, if you compare this area to Florida, in Florida you don't see much of a fence because the sandy soil versus clay soil, and they don't have an outlet structure. It continuously infiltrates, and the side slopes are not 3 to 1. They're very shallow. So the water does get deep in most of these ponds, per my experience.
Commissioner Thomas.
I wanted to say Section E needs to come out. The intent of this was to go forward. And just like with any other code upgrades, we don't go back and penalize homeowners because their electrical is back in 1989 and 2020. Now electrical codes are different, and have them bring them up to code to 2020, even though you bought your house in 1989. The intention, Alex, and I think you and I have talked about this, and I think I've done it with the other members in your staff, was to go forward. We're looking at the growth in Henry County. We're looking at developers in Henry County and bringing our retention ponds process and procedures up to code, because what we have now is so antiquated. That's the whole goal. Well, we are not trying to get everybody to go back 30 years and 20 years and find all these retention ponds and put fences around them. This is to go forward. And this did develop because there is a developer who has a couple of subdivisions now with huge retention ponds in them, and he does not want to spend the money to encase them, which is wrong. There'll be a lot of children out in that subdivision. So this is to go forward. This is not trying to have anybody go back and look at 20-year-old ponds or look at their homes that were built in 1989 and bring them up to code to 2021. That's ridiculous. If we did something like that, we'll have to look at everybody's plumbing, everybody's electrical, everybody's foundations. We just don't work like that. We're looking at what we can correct going forward, and that's the whole purpose. What can we correct going forward to protect children that are in these subdivisions with these huge retention ponds that need some form of protection around them? That's the goal.
Alex, did you look at other counties, compare some ordinance with what some of the other counties are doing?
Yes, ma'am. Gwinnett, Fulton, and Cobb County, that they do require that. I've done many, many designs in them, bunch of cities, Forsyth County, other states.
I understand that, but is it similar to what we are imposing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Patrick, anything else that we need to know?
No, when a motion is made, it would be helpful to clarify if the ordinance should include any limitations on the materials for the fence, and if we could also clarify whether it will apply to existing ponds, so I know how to amend the ordinance or to leave it alone.
So I guess what my question be okay, so if we exclude existing ponds, then, I mean, it doesn't stop children from drowning in existing ponds.
Right, existing ponds will remain unchanged, which is fine. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not involved in a lot of the conversations about how things come about, but it seemed to me as I drafted it that addressing only new ponds did not address the underlying problem. So I added that section, and that was my doing, completely my doing, but that's why we bring them to the board. You have to approve you have to approve what we've presented to you. So either way the board selects is easy enough to resolve.
Yes.
How many ponds does stormwater maintain throughout the county?
I believe around 300 something.
So 300?
Yes,
Or
sir.
some of those on private property?
Yes, sir.
So if we maintain them, we're responsible for putting those fences up as well?
No, we just maintain them as far as growth cutting, you know.
So we maintain them with an agreement for entry? Is that how we maintain on private? Do we go on private property and maintain a retention pond? And now you're telling me that if we have this in place, we're not responsible for putting the fence around it?
Commissioner, for us to cut the detention ponds in private property, it was an old initiative. I never seen that before done anywhere.
But we still do it.
But yes, sir, but
So we maintain the 300, and if we have 1,000, what makes us not want to maintain the other 700?
Historically, Commissioner, my recollection is that the Stormwater Department did occasionally enter into a right of entry agreement with the owner or owners of a private detention pond, and they would go in and they would cut down primarily cutting down vegetation. Sometimes there might be some digging out of the structures. And one of the problems with doing that is that once we do it, that pond kind of becomes our problem. So, once we're in it, you're in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound kind of thing.
Goes back
So
to my question,
that's
though.
right.
If we're there, it belongs to us, and on private property, we're responsible for putting the fence around it, according to this.
Well, our obligation is limited to the internal. This ordinance would not impose upon us the requirement to do it, because this ordinance is part of the development regulation ordinance. It would not impose an obligation on someone who's merely maintaining. It imposes it on the developer or the owner.
So if you take out Section E, though, it would kind of release us of that liability.
If you take out Section E, the existing ponds will remain unaffected. Any pond already permitted will proceed, regardless of this ordinance.
Okay, so I'd like
But
to
they
call
still
for.
exist.
But it'll exist, it just won't need to be fenced.
All right, let's move forward. I'd like to call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we remove Section E. The intent of this is to improve upon our retention ponds for new developments and new buildings going forward. So there would be no requirement for any backlash or anything of that nature. Also, to allow when detention ponds may impose upon private property, there is an option to use wooding in that fencing for privacy only. Other than that, all retention ponds will have the chain link fence as the product to be used to surround them.
Okay, so I have a motion. Can I get a second? I'll second. Any, no other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion fails.
Thank you.
Welcome. Next on the agenda, we have an ordinance by the Henry County to add, delete, or modify multiple sections of the Henry County Code of Ordinance, including the Unified Land Development Code, ULDC, regarding the administration of development regulations in Henry County and for other purposes countywide.
Good morning again. Chair Harrell, Commissioners. If I could direct your attention to the first page of the staff report, we've got our recommendations listed out. There's several. We'll go through a maximum height for manufacturing districts. And also as we go through these, beginning on the second page and extending onto the third page of the staff report are these summaries. So the first one would be allowing for unlimited maximum height in M1 and M2. Right now, and this is extremely simple, for new developments in M1 and M2, there's no limit to the maximum height. The problem comes that it says that for all other situations, it's limited to 75 feet. And that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's either going to be grandfathered in or it's going to be a new structure. So we're recommending that we just allow for unlimited maximum height, period. The next part is for additional townhome standards, and I want to go through this in more detail. This is the most excuse me, intensive of what we want to bring to you. The next is for clarified signage standards. We've got several different parts of the sign code that need revision. In other words, we didn't have any provision for drive-through menu boards. The chart for mixed use and OI was almost unworkable. We had a requirement to limit the aggregate sign limitations. It's not something that we could easily implement. We are requesting that you approve that as well. The next one is to remove the City of Hampton from the Zoning Advisory Board. This is something, the City of Hampton has been doing their own zoning since January of last year. And they have themselves removed their appointee to the ZAB, but we've not yet gotten around to taking it out of the code. So that's what we intend to do with this. A limit on land density for the watershed protection areas. Water Authority, they would limit the density to 1.75 for a single family in the watershed protection districts. This is something, quite frankly, we thought was in the ULDC already, and it was brought to our attention that it was not. So we recommend adding that to the ULDC. For public hearing signs, beginning this month, we are moving toward requiring applicants to place their own zoning signs. And this would clarify in the code that this is something that the county can do. Excuse me. Lastly, many people may not know this, but there's a zoning district called IAC. Nobody has ever requested it. It's been in the ULDC since 2009. We're requesting that all of those instances that refers to IAC and the ULDC be removed. Going back to townhome standards, excuse me. If I could direct your attention to page 7 in the staff report and extending on to page 8, it seems like with the future land use map that was adopted back in 2018, it increases density around the county, and especially in the vicinity of I-75, for densities that may reach up to 6 dwelling units per acre. So between applicants requesting RS, RM, mixed use, we've gotten more requests for townhomes, and it's only been recently that we've realized that we really don't have a lot of development standards for townhomes. It's kind of a gap. in our ULDC, and we want to fill that gap. To a small degree, this is practical. In other words, the width of the units that we've never required a minimum width for, it needs to be wide enough to accommodate all of the utilities, since these typically have to be underground and so forth. Mainly, these are aesthetic. It's how does it look? And to a large degree, we have looked at zoning conditions that we've placed over the years for townhomes. So, for example, page 7, what we're recommending is that townhomes have masonry front and side facades, that the back be limited to masonry or hardy plank, but vinyl siding would be prohibited. We also want to require that there be at least a 1-foot overhang, that they have eaves, and not just have no eaves whatsoever. It's purely aesthetic. Requiring that the roof pitch be 512, which is one better than single family, which only requires 412. We would require that the dwelling units that are next to each other look different. So there would be a 1-foot offset between units that are next door to each other. That there be different architecture for each unit. So you could tell quite clearly that these dwelling units are different and not just a wall forming this row. On page 8, different building facade materials for adjacent homes. Something practical, if front driveways would just be prohibited if you've got a rear alleyway behind the row of townhomes. And also, we want to introduce standards for brownstones, because brownstones have been a topic of discussion. In the context of that discussion, brown homes are an upgraded type of townhome. So if something is required to be a brownstone, then the code, if this is adopted, would require what townhomes are required to have, but then also go that extra mile and show something that's unique to brownstones, namely that they be 100% masonry, all 4 sides, that the finished floor elevation would be required to be a minimum of 3 feet above the highest grade, which is going to require those steps that get up to the front door, that it's limited in access to rear entry, and that brownstones are required to be multi-level. This is in the cases where brownstones are required. Otherwise, we would fall back on the townhome standards that would be generally. The chart on page 8 is for the minimum unit width, which we've never had before. What we're recommending is that it be based upon whether or not the unit is front access or rear access, and whether it have a single car garage or a multi-car garage, or no car garage, because if you have no garage at all, you have to fit 2 vehicles on the driveway. So if it's to be front entry and you've got a 2-car driveway, whether there's a garage or not, the finding that we've been given from the county DOT is that there needs to be at least 16 feet of clear area, of grass, if you will, between the edges of the driveways. So at a minimum, if you've got a 18-foot wide driveway, that's a 34-foot unit. If you've got a 20-foot driveway, that would be 36. We went ahead and wrote it up as 36. If that's something that is the pleasure of the board to change, that would be just fine. Just please make that part of your motion. As far as the rest of it, if developer chooses not to have a unit that's as wide as 34 feet, that's fine. There are choices. But that choice would be that they would have a single car garage, front entry, or those units would be rear entry. So there are choices. And in the case where it's not a two-car or a double car width driveway, front entry, then we wrote this up as 26 feet wide. There's nothing magical about that. So for example, if it's the pleasure of the board to reduce that down to 24 feet, that's fine. P&Z has no objection. Please just make that part of your motion. Moving on, we do require or recommend that we require that rear entry garages are just required for multi-level dwellings, and again, 16 feet between driveways. Our code doesn't say what the specific minimum home size would have to be for townhomes. In RM, it gives minimum home size for apartments. We're looking at 650 feet for an apartment, one bedroom, 900 square feet for an apartment, two bedroom. That just doesn't seem right for townhomes. So what we're recommending is that townhomes are going to be a minimum of 2 bedrooms. I don't know that I've ever heard of a 1-bedroom townhome, and that all townhomes will be a minimum of 1,500 square feet heated. The next one, letter D, specifies that the 60-foot setback would be for the development itself. We're not trying to have the units to be 60 feet away from the internal street, but rather the front setback per unit would be 25 feet. We would like for elevations of dwellings to be provided in advance of approval and to be made a condition of approval. That for those that are the townhomes, not brownstones, but for the townhomes, that the foundations would be above grade enough to give the appearance of a crawl space, and that the front yards would be sodded, and that specifically planning and zoning approval is required through an architectural review process. So that's the long and short of it. There are several that may include wordsmithing, several that are just gaps in our works. Townhomes are more in-depth. Madam Chair, we would like for this to be first of a series of ULDC amendments that we would bring probably on the morning meetings to this board as we update our ULDC, because it's been a number of years. But I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Persons wishing to speak in favor of the request may. Those that wish to speak in opposition as well. So do we have anyone in our audience that would like to come up and make comments regarding these changes? Come forward and line up, please. Y'all have a collective amount of time of 10 minutes, so if somebody takes the whole 10 minutes, then okay, if you would, please give your name, who you represent.
I'm Corey Deal with the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association, representing the Metro South chapter. We agree that subdivision or townhome standards are needed, and they'll help us as well. It does feel like there's some ambiguity in the presentation and some possible gaps that it would be good if we could just have a conversation with you guys. So we just respectfully request a delay and step back and have some conversations with staff and you guys about it. So that would be, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Chris Knight. I am a 23-year resident of Henry County. I'm also president, division president for Dan Ryan Builders, formerly Knight Homes, here locally. We build as well as develop in the community now for about 36 years. I want to thank the way we found out about this ordinance or ULDC amendment was last week. We had a lunch. I want to thank Sherry for organizing that and the different department heads. We had a lunch down in Locust Grove that the building development community had requested to catch up on some things. Post-COVID, we had a kind of a year of not having a lot of communication, and I think we had a productive time. And so that was last week, and the ordinance was going to be presented today. So we had very little time, really no time, to provide input from the professional community that would have to implement these type of standards. So we're not opposed to standards per se, and I'll also just interject that with regards to detention ponds, as a developer, I'm not opposed to putting fences around detention ponds. So to go back to that, but Stacy mentioned maybe a series of amendments. What our request would be is that we be included in the process through some type of workshops, if you will. The standards that have been set forth here are extremely arbitrary. They're somewhat, they're very difficult to actually construct in many cases. Some of these we're not opposed to material stipulations in some cases. We're not opposed to square footage minimums in some cases. We do think the county's a big place, and some things that are appropriate in one location may not be appropriate in others, and vice versa. And so this greatly would greatly limit the flexibility that we would have, and also that you would have for location-specific project approvals and reviews. Just to touch on a few things, the width, townhomes come in all shapes and sizes and widths. It's not uncommon in many jurisdictions to see townhomes as narrow as 16 feet wide, 3 stories. It's not uncommon to see even a 2-car garage townhome with a rear garage at 20 feet wide. It's not uncommon to see a front load 2-car at about 24 feet wide. It's not uncommon to see a ranch, maybe a store and a half, active adult type product that has characteristics that would not fit within these proposed standards either. So we think the 26 feet is not going to be possible, quite frankly. The 36 feet as well. Any multifamily dwelling is being proposed to be required to have a rear load garage. We think that could use some work. The 25-foot setback on the front, if it's a public right-of-way and we add 12 feet or so of the right-of-way space, we're talking about setting a townhome back 32 feet off the curb, which is for single family appropriate, for a townhome much deeper than we see in many cases, many applications with regards to townhomes. The foundation proposal to be a crawl space or have the appearance of a crawl space, that's a workshop in itself to determine how to actually construct that and apply that and what it costs. With regards to cost, what we're seeing in the industry on newly developed lots, just to give you an idea of kind of price bands for newly developed lots and newly developed product. Townhomes, we can't deliver a townhome today. The idea of a townhome being cheap and something that is unattractive, we can't deliver a townhome today for under $250,000 on a newly developed lot, even if it's about a 1,400 square foot with a 1-car garage, because of the land cost, the development cost, and the building cost have risen so dramatically. So we see entry-level townhomes, kind of the new price band being $250,000 to $325,000, and that's when we have flexibility on what to build. We see the starting point for single family on newly developed lots starting at about that $325,000 range and going up from there, obviously over $500,000 in many cases. And so when we talk about affordability and we think about those things, we have a supply problem, a shortage of houses, and we have an affordability problem, and there's all sorts of ways to talk about that. If aesthetics are what we're aiming for, the builder-developer community, we are at your disposal. We will gladly attend, make ourselves available, contribute. We know that we're not going to get everything we want. We would just love to have some input. And so we would respectfully ask that this proposal before you today be struck from this entire amendment, or at least be tabled until such time that we can have the opportunity to participate in a constructive way and try to help the county accomplish with forward thinking what you want as a representative and a resident, and what I want as a resident and a local business person. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tiffany Hogan on behalf of D.R. Horton, Atlanta East Division, along with Mr. Knight and also what Mr. Deal has spoken about. I believe that you all also received letters from the Home Builders Association in advance, as well as the Council for Quality Growth. To echo what my colleagues have said already this morning, we are simply asking as key partners in the building community in Henry County to have an opportunity to sit down and really discuss the practical implications of the changes to the ordinance. Because for those of you that I've worked with before, you've heard me say time and time again that building and growth in your communities really depend on a great partnership between the private sector as well as the public sector, including you as elected officials and the staff. The best way to accomplish that is to have conversations in advance rather than making rules that aren't practical for implementation in the field. And then there's a necessity for variances or other issues where we're seeking clarification constantly from staff on certain things that aren't clarified. So again, we are simply asking for additional time to have meetings with staff, to have time to have meetings with you guys if you would like to do so that you understand some of the implications to the building and development community that this would impose. We are very, very in favor of something within the ordinance that outlines what you are seeking with townhomes. That way we don't have to make as many calls to Stacy and Ian and his colleagues in order to clarify things when we are looking at these projects. We just want an opportunity to have the input, and we respectfully request that you table this for at least 30 days to give us that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is not long and drawn out. I'm going to ask that we table this until the commissioners have had the opportunity to meet with staff and us look at possibly doing some type of workshop or having some type of input in this.
Sure.
Yes. Yes.
And I can tell you that staff has no objection to that whatsoever. But it seems like the point of contention is the townhome standards. So if we could put off the townhome standards, let's please do. But if it's the pleasure of the board to go ahead and vote on the rest of them, that would be fine too.
I would just ask that we table the whole entire thing until we've had the opportunity, because I can't make a decision on something that I haven't had the opportunity to really review. And if I have the support of the commission on that, then I think that to table it is and give us an opportunity to come back and you know, let's look at doing a workshop. Let's look at including our partners here in the community on this, and you know, before we move forward. Commissioner Holmes.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Madam Chair. Stacy, in the future, before you bring anything like this to the board, these type of changes, there needs to be discussion beforehand. I don't think any of us can come in here and make this decision without, you know, being able to answer, you know, ask questions, and you answer those questions on why we are looking to move forward with an ordinance change with this kind of magnitude. We support the development community, and we do not want to drive them out of Henry County. So,
I understand, Commissioner.
so
What I'm
please.
hearing from you guys is that we'll need to set up a workshop with our development community, but then also we'll need to reach out to the commissioners as well, just to make sure that you guys have your concerns answered as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm going to support this at all, even after a workshop. So
Understood.
I don't like many. There are some things in there I like, but there are many things in this ordinance that I don't agree with.
Understood.
So yeah, let me give out, Commissioner Clemens, go ahead before I make my final
Thank you,
comments.
Chair. I also agree with you on tabling, but what I would ask, if staff could, when you all bring stuff like this before us and you make amendments to changes, that you put what the existing ordinance says, do scratch through so that we can see the difference. And in the workshop and before this comes back, we need to see that. I had concerns about the truck stops that's in here and where you guys are allowing them to be. And the changes with the truck stops. I had concerns about the daycare centers being able to be in certain C1 and C2s, which would allow them to be in commercial spaces like in shopping centers. There's a lot in here, and I agree with Commissioner Holmes. It's not just the townhomes, that's major, but it was a lot of stuff that was thrown into this ordinance that's gonna change, and we did not get what the existing ordinance says and compare it to the changes. So we need all of that done with the entire packet.
Okay, and let me just say, Commissioner, that I am completely on board with that. And to that end, we did include the ordinance in track change format, and that may be where what you mean when it talks about the truck stops and the daycares and so forth like that. So, for example, every single section that mentioned that zoning district that we would like to be removed, we put that in here. And so it shows that, and IAC is stricken. But we included the entire section so that you guys could see where that section was. And those sections deal with all sorts of stuff, like truck stops and daycares and stuff like that. But we did not, in this instance, recommend any changes to the truck stop ordinance other than removing that reference to IAC. But I'm with you, Commissioner.
All right, and so we're going to table this particular item to give us an opportunity to come back and reassess and have the opportunity to speak with you all, because I think that, as the gentleman spoke earlier, different districts have different desires, and so though we try to make it uniform, sometimes that is not always the case. And so it just gives us the opportunity to kind of look at this and make a decision that's going to be in the best interest of everyone. So we'll table it for this particular time. Stephanie, do we have any one signed up for public comment? Stephanie, do you have some booklets for us that you can come and give to each of the commissioners? I would like to ask for David. David, can you come back up and read? One of the things that was not read into the record was the nonprofits that was going to be receiving the awards and what those amounts are with the changes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Henry County community. The nonprofits that we're recommending are Berean Christian Church, the amount, and I'll read them in the order of the name and then the amount. Berean Christian Church, $105,525. Connecting Henry, the revised amount is $78,323. Dream Center of Henry County, $25,386. Global Impact Christian Ministries, $105,525. Grace Baptist Church of Georgia, that new amount is now $313,000. Light of the World Christian Tabernacle, $118,188. Miracle Mission Hope House, the new amount is $102,763. And Samaritans Together, $70,350.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Our next, I need to get a motion for the approval of the April 19th minutes.
Move to approve.
Okay, got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Thomas. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion approved. Upcoming meetings, we have a millage hearing on July 20th at 10 a.m. It is a call meeting for a public hearing, July 20th. That will be a public hearing in July 20th at 6:30 p.m. A public hearing to be held during the regularly scheduled BOC meeting. July 27th, 2021 at 10 a.m. is a special call meeting for public hearing and adoption of the millage. August 3rd at 9 a.m. is a regular scheduled board meeting. I do have a couple announcements. This is race weekend, so we are happy and definitely would like to welcome all NASCAR fans and ask you to come out and support our race. Again, we are continuing to celebrate our bicentennial. There are a lot of activities that are planned, so please check the county website with regards to that. And I'd like to ask everyone to have a great rest of your day. Meeting is adjourned.